but since we barely got. Good afternoon, everyone.
Here we go.
We're going to go ahead and get our meeting started. And don't make me have to separate you in the back. Julie, Maribel, Casey, I see you over there. All right. We're going to begin our Children's, Seniors, Families Committee meeting for Monday, the 23rd of October. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Colin, for the roll.
Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Oh, here.
Present.
Maybe.
And Chairperson Chavez.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to go to public comment, and this is an opportunity for folks in the community to speak to an item that is not on the agenda but within the purview of this committee. Do we have any speakers?
We have no request to speak in the room, but we do have one request to speak online.
Great, thank you.
Next speaker is resident. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I've addressed this committee on multiple occasions about my kids. They're being sex trafficked by my former attorney, Valerie Houghton. And I'm being completely ignored as my children are being put in harm's way. And the DA's office is helping to conceal this abuse. And it's really wrong what's going on. And I mean, like, I can only imagine that this is what happened when you have well-connected people like Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Cosby. I mean, how did they get away with it for so long? I mean, how many of these types of people do we have in this county? I mean, it's got to be a lot because, I mean, I addressed this committee. Supervisor Chavez told me she'd get back to me, or that staff would get back to me, and nobody's gotten back to me. It's because nobody cares, right? Because well-connected people, they can just do whatever they want to our children. And it's wrong. It's wrong what's going on. I put this information online about what's going on. If you Google petition DA Rosen, the first result that pops up, you can see how the DA's office is helping Ms. Houghton to sex traffic my kids. So I want to ask, if there's anybody on this committee or anybody present at this meeting that can help protect my children, I would greatly appreciate it. I mean, if government isn't helping protect children, who will? Who will do it? And I think that what you're doing by ignoring me, it's a direct reflection of what's going on in the community. I mean, it's got to be happening a lot more than just me. I know another person who also the same thing happened. If you go to freeariana.org, you can see how this person was also prosecuted after he reported that his daughter was being molested. And there's another case of another 3 girls who were molested, and the DA's office just completely ignored it and didn't do anything. So please, please help my children. I beg you, please help. Thank you very much.
And that concludes the request to speak.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to the consent calendar, and I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to get us started. All right. So I want to add items 4, 6, 7, 11, 14, and 15 to the consent calendar. And I'm going to defer item 5. And item 5 I'm deferring because we received the report today, actually a little bit ago. And so I want to make sure that public and the board have a chance to review it. And I just want to say, remind all of you that when we put items on consent, it's often just because the reports are so clear and concise and helpful that we don't need to torture you, and we will torture others, or because we've already talked to you offline. So I know everybody does this when we start to read the consent calendar. Item 4 is to receive a report from the Social Services Agency relating to contract and procurement operations. I want to thank the staff for the very clear report, and I understand that there is more work being done on procurement that will allow us to continue to work in partnership with our nonprofit partners to build in the flexibility and the ability to improve those contracts as we work through and learn more about what's most effective. So I want to thank the staff for that, and I want to say to our Chief Operating Officer that I hope that's an area as you're thinking about procurement that we'll continue to explore. Item 6 is to receive the annual report from the Social Services Agency, Department of Aging and Adult Services relating to the In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority. And again, I want to thank the staff for the information. I will just add on that item that one issue that I think will be coming back to the committee is to better understand how to facilitate access to services for our clients and also for our current employees. Something that I hope when the report comes back, when item 5 comes back to us, we can discuss. Item 7 is to receive a report from the Social Services Agency, Department of Employment Benefit Services relating to the 2023 annual report. It's very clear and very, very well done. Item 11 is to receive a report from the Probation Department relating to the calendar year 2022 Juvenile Justice Annual Report, the data book. I want to thank the staff for the deep work that went into that body of work. Item 14 is to receive a report relating to the development and operations of the hub. I just want to say this has been a long time coming, and to Consuelo and Natalie and Damien and Maricela, thank you. And I want to make sure that we do a groundbreaking in 2023, not 2024, even if it rains. I don't care. We want to be out there building things. Item 15 is a report from the Office of the County Executive relating to the Vietnamese American Service Center. I want to thank Liam Roberto and the VASC team for all their hard work, and I am really looking forward to the soft launch of the reservation system and a third floor, not groundbreaking, but door opening. So however, please work with my staff on that. For the reservation process instructions in the PowerPoint, please send a soft copy to all the board offices, so if there's any feedback that we get, we're able to write on that and get it back to you. And lastly, I'd like to request an off-agenda report prior to your next report back that details and updates the construction and status of the third floor, the information on your reservation process, outreach and promotion for the VASC website and services, and the collaborative work being done with community organizations, specifically relative to youth, older adults, single mothers, and their activities. Details on programming, including senior nutrition, health benefits, and application. And a number of these questions we sent. We just would like to get them from all of you so we can respond to public inquiry. And finally, regarding the referral process and the process used for referral. And again, I'll ask my staff to make sure you get that in writing. And then the other item, and I apologize, I skipped this, Supervisor Arenas, is item 19 is the juvenile hall blood lead level screening project. I'd like to refer that to the county executive's office to examine that body of work being done and to come back to us with the options for a renewed pilot in that area. And that's item 19. Any questions that you have or comments or anything you want to add?
Yes, I do. And I'd actually like to place item 11 back on regular agenda if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like it's item for consent, item 4, 6, 7, 14 and 15 at this
And
point.
19,
And 19,
with
you said a
direction to
referral.
staff, yes,
A referral out.
yes. And then item
5 is a deferral.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And I do have a comment for item 4, which is the procurement operations piece. I'd like to see when this returns back how these vendors, I think specifically for SSA, there was, I think, 187 vendors, if I'm correct, maybe more. And I want to know from the vendors how services are being rendered, and if it's a place-based amount or if it's a countywide service. As you'll see in the rest of our agenda, we'll be talking about place-based services. And I think we need to see procurement in the same fashion.
And do you mean you want to make sure that you know where for each of these contracts, where they're,
Right.
yeah, what the area is of service?
Yes.
Yes, easy to do? Yeah, más o menos. Okay, we'll do it. Thank you.
Of course.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
All right, do you want to make that in a motion?
Yeah, I think I said all those items, and I'll make that a motion if you.
Thank you, and I'll second it. All right, do we have a motion and a second? Any comments from staff on this?
There are no requests to speak.
Great.
All right, Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to item 8. Let me see, is that right? Yes. And this is to receive a report from the Social Services Agency Department of Employment and Benefits relating to the 2023 annual report of Second Harvest of Silicon Valley.
I don't know if we need to be introduced by someone, but this is Tracy Weatherby from Second Harvest. Is there someone from SSA? Do I need an introduction, or should I just proceed?
Well, I didn't see anybody rushing up, so I'm going to assume it's you.
Okay,
And in
great,
fact, I didn't
great.
even see you till just now, so there you go.
Well, I'm Tracy Weatherby, and I head up strategy and advocacy for the food bank, and we appreciate this opportunity to give an update to this committee on what's going on in our community and the work we're doing in conjunction with the Social Services Agency. I think Anita is going to run some slides for me. If not, I can pull them up. I'm going to go ahead and pull those up. Yeah, hang on one moment.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, as you know, we are a very close partner with the county at many levels. One place we do that is with the Social Services Agency. We are the major CalFresh assister other than the Social Services Agency itself in the county. And we also provide food to over 400 partners at over 900 locations. And so we just wanted to share a little bit about what is going on in the community right now. The thing that has happened that I know some of you have already heard about is that surprisingly, we are now serving as many people as we were during the peak of the pandemic. And it's a really interesting time because we knew that a lot of people were going to come in for food assistance after the pandemic, once they realized that over 50% of what we provide is fresh produce, that, there's not a lot of stigma, that we try to be welcoming to community members who are in need of food. And so we knew that after the pandemic, our overall level would probably go up and stay up, but it briefly went down the beginning of 2022 as people went back to work. But then the double whammy of losing the CalFresh emergency allotments, which were worth, I think it was 16 or 19 million, $16 million a month to our two counties, the majority of that in Santa Clara County, of course, and the inflation of food and gas has really peaked need again. And so we're seeing that the need is now at as high a level as it was during the middle of the pandemic. And it's also moved back to being primarily, once again, kind of closer to 75% for Santa Clara County. At the very beginning of the pandemic, there was a little more need in San Mateo County. So briefly, Santa Clara County was only 2/3 of our service, but now it's back up to about 75%. The other thing I wanted to point out, because I know this is a really big focus for the county, is the area of food rescue and SB 1383. And a lot of people don't realize that we work really closely with the county and with joint venture Silicon Valley to help the county meet the requirements there. We've been rescuing food from retailers and wholesalers for decades. And what SB 1383 has allowed is it's forced more retailers and wholesalers to work with someone like us. And so we enable by far the majority of food rescue that's done in our counties. We either pick it up directly from very, very large producers, or we enable our partners to pick it up. We handle all of the food safety training, we provide infrastructure, we do the reporting. So these are some of the three key ways we're really working with the community. And what we're really trying to grapple with ourselves now is really adapting to these operational challenges with the loss of CalFresh, with our role as trying to ensure that all the different agencies who are serving community have the food that they need, because almost everybody you see giving food to people is getting that food from us for free, or the majority of that food from us for free. And as we've seen both need continue to go back up, and we've seen support from both the community and our government partners go down, we're really trying to figure out how to keep that system really sustainable as ARPA funds and those sorts of things go away. So we've had to recently relook at our food budget, and there's some cases where we're now having to, alternate eggs and milk and meat in order to reduce our food budget. And we're operating across 4 warehouses, and we have a plan to try and consolidate operations in a new central location in San Jose. So we are working on all of those different operational challenges and really appreciate the partnership that we do get from the county. So are there any questions that I can answer?
Thank you, Tracy. I'm going to first go to the public and see if there are any comments from.
There are no requests to speak in the room, and there are no requests to speak online.
I will close the public hearing component, and I'll see if my colleague has any questions. None? I have just a question. Actually, it's probably not for you, Tracy, but it's really more Dan. Just looking at the slide that said in Santa Clara County, more than 75,000 households lost $12 million in monthly grocery benefits. To me, that's actually obviously very significant, and I'm sure it is to you as well. And I'm wondering, from your experience, what has been the impact? And what I'm curious about, does that mean that you're seeing needs come in different areas because food is being constrained? Like people asking for different kinds of services is trying to deal with their budget?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. It's a really good question. And we may be able to actually provide a much more comprehensive response back. But I think generally that's what would happen, is that if we see kind of food instability, you're going to see that trickle into other aspects, that you're going to see kind of broader needs, which we're trying to address through other programs. But at the end of the day, inaccess or no access to food, I think, is a pretty significant issue.
Part of the reason I'm asking is that amount just for 1 month it's so much. It's actually more than we are contributing to many of the nonprofits that are providing food probably outside our senior nutrition program. And so what I'm wondering is there are 2 issues that I'm sort of grappling with. One is that we worked hard to get people signed up and to get them benefits, and we still need to continue to do that, I know. But 2 is that with the cost of food staying high, it's not dropping. Some things have dropped, actually, but not most products. And with the loss of that, and what we know that would be over a year in terms of food availability, are there discussions happening within SSA about how to address that? Or is that something that you haven't had a chance yet? And I know you've been in your job for like a week, so I'm not trying to, it's a genuine question as to whether or not you've got a working group already on this.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as a working group. There have been discussions about what the impact and if any loss of benefits is going to mean for the broader community. But that is something I can take back to maybe give a much more thoughtful response on kind of next steps.
So what I would like to ask, just as part of a motion, is that we have a food system team that is supposed to be bringing us back something. I just can't remember if it's in January or February. I do want to make sure that your department and your office are really integral to those conversations, given that you play such a big role in feeding people on behalf of the county. And I'm not sure when I saw the list of participants that you all were on it. I just can't remember.
I was going to just add, I think exactly aligned with your point, we have some real opportunities to align food-oriented work happening across the county organization, specifically through our food systems work and leadership position that we're currently filling, but also how to integrate things like the positive change coming down from the state that's having Deb's staff who are enrolling people in Medi-Cal at the same time offer to help support them in enrolling in CalFresh, because I know a really significant push that's going to be happening in the coming months and years is to really try and maximize our participation rates for CalFresh, because I understand, and Dan, you might be able to speak to this more eloquently, that although we've been a real leader as a county in getting people enrolled in Medi-Cal, historically our rates for CalFresh have been less than what we think is probably the underlying need and eligibility. And so I think that change in having people in one interaction have the opportunity to enroll in Medi-Cal and CalFresh may really significantly positively impact our CalFresh enrollment rates. So
That's
lots of opportunities to connect work.
Do you want to jump in on that?
Not specifically on that one, but I would like to jump in.
Go ahead, and I'll finish
tag
up.
team?
Yeah, that's right. I'm all ready.
Wonderful. Actually, I was just starting to think about some of the issues that I had been hearing in our community. And I know that from our Office of Children and Families, we recognize that we don't have enough childcare providers, right? We want to build that. We want to build out the slots, and building out the slots is also helping out with funding to increase certainly the capacity of those providers, whether they're home-based or center-based, which means to me, because we don't have enough home childcare providers, there's more children staying at home, maybe on their own, right? Or some alternatives. And one of the things that was brought to my attention was, this is going to be another era of latchkey kids. And we've already learned our lessons around latchkey kids. I don't know that we need to repeat more of the same. So if we know there's more children, more youth staying at home, and there's certainly food that's available out there, but not maybe food that kids know what to do with. I mean, the refrigerator for many of us here could be full of food, yet my 14-year-old does not know how to do anything other than maybe scramble some eggs and toast some bread, which is pretty basic, and that's all very good for one-time basis, but on an everyday basis, that we know that both parents are working typically, or at least those families that are struggling have both parents working. So if we know these things to be true, who's feeding our children, which I'm afraid it's going to be fast food folks are feeding our children on their way home from school because there's a 99-cent sandwich at whatever place. What are we doing to help pivot and make meals at home more plausible for our youth? I'm certainly not trying to encourage, a first grader to turn on the stove, but if it's, a 14, 13-year-old, I think there's some things that you could do within the microwave or or even turning on the stove, for crying out loud. Let's turn on that stove and heat up some broccoli or something. So how are we pivoting to make sure that our youth are able to provide for themselves a meal at home when we know parents are not working, we know that they're not being taken care of by a child care provider because we don't have enough?
I think that's a really great point, Supervisor Arenas. And the one real positive I see in the environment right now is that last year was the first year of California being the first state in the nation to have universal school meals. So at least for school age kids, each of those kids can be getting both breakfast and lunch at school for free. That doesn't necessarily solve your childcare provider and, you know, not quite at school age yet challenge. There are programs that childcare providers can participate in, but they don't tend to reimburse those childcare providers.
And I'm not focused, Tracy, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm not focused on childcare providers. I'm focused on children being at home on their own without a childcare provider. And so when these children are home, including youth, they need to be able to make food for themselves, something easy, right? But if nobody teaches them or they don't have the right ingredients, God knows when I'm at home and I'm trying to create something from what we have at home, I can come up with 1,000,001 reasons why I can't because I don't have that one thing, that one ingredient, right? And so I think it could be really easily applied to our youth. And so the alternative is to buy something at a fast food restaurant walking home from school, and which is not the better of the two options. And so I'm asking, what are we doing to create some more capacity for our youth to be able to cook for themselves? And I know that there's things like Vegelution are doing to encourage cooking with youth and kids, but I think at a more greater scale, what is Second Harvest doing?
Well, our nutrition team has actually really been building out our culturally sensitive nutrition center online. And so you can go on there, search by ingredients for recipes. We have a lot of recipes, in fact, a whole cookbook that was contributed by our community members. And the emphasis is very often on what's easy and quick to make, but tasty and fresh, and utilizes a lot of the ingredients that we're able to provide. And our nutrition department also will do, you know, some cooking demonstrations and classes at community events and that sort of thing, but I doubt that's going to reach the kids. And I will, you know, take back that question. I think there's a lot of resources on that nutrition center that especially for youth would be really helpful, but maybe we want to do something to make sure the word about that gets out to families and youth, and that we're making sure those recipes are kind of targeted towards some of them as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it needs to be more tangible than something online. Although, you know, maybe a TikTok video would probably be the best thing, but a recipe online, just reading through, I'm sure that is not even appealing to me as an adult. And I am not on TikTok, so I don't know where I would get my recipes from. But anyways, that's not the problem here. The problem here is our youth. And one of the things, and I'll share this with you, Tracy, I think I shared this already with my colleague, but I wanted to share it with you. One of our high school's football team, one of the moms whose son plays in the football team, put together a dinner schedule for some of the kids because they are unhoused. And because they're unhoused, they don't have necessarily a reliable third meal that you talked about. And they do this before practice. They do this before games so that they could be well fed and so they can play a solid game. The fact that our community is doing this is beautiful. I just wonder what our systems are doing to also pivot and not relying on our football coaches and moms and whatnot to do this. And so I'd like to just raise this as a concern, and hopefully in your upcoming reports or offline, we can talk a little bit more about what can actually be done to pivot and to meet kids and our youth where they're at and our families in general, because it's not just our youth, it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility to figure things out for them so that it makes it really easy and good, healthy choices after school. So thank you.
And I'll just, if I can, so thank you for that. What I'm going to request is that I'm going to make just a couple of recommendations in the form of a motion, and one of them would be to have this idea of helping young people learn how to take the food that they're getting from Second Harvest and other organizations and be able to cook at home and be able to prepare healthier meals into the food system report out, because I think that's coming to us relatively quickly. I also want to ask the staff to take a look at the total amount of money over the last year over the coming year we anticipate would be lost because of the changes in Medi-Cal, in CalFresh, and to help us understand how much ground is being gained financially in terms of people using, getting onto CalFresh over the next year. Like, what's our anticipated goal for increasing that access? And then what do we know that loss is? Because I think we have to start to, as part of this issue, is figuring out what the actual missing money is from families who are trying to eat in our community, and then working back from that, take a look at re-engaging not just the county but our city partners in playing a leadership role in continuing to fund this very, very important and very basic need in our community. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Any comments or feedback from my colleagues? I know we closed the public hearing. All right, so we'll take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Arenas
Yes.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. All right.
All right, thank you so much.
We're going to move on to item 9, and this is to receive a report from SSA, Department of Family and Children's Services, relating to summer camps and enrichment activities. Welcome.
Good afternoon. This is Damian Wright, DFCS Director, and to my right,
Denise Marshu, Director for CAFA.
and to my left,
Hi, Christine Thurman, foster adopted parent, and also
Christine, did you say?
Christine Thurman.
Yeah, oh, there you go.
Yes, hi, Christine Thurman. I'm foster adopted parent and also provided assistance with the summer program this past year.
Oh, thank you.
good afternoon. We'll be submitting our report for summer camps and enrichment activities. First slide, please. Our second slide. Who's running it? Okay. So CAFPA and DFCS distributed flyers in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese to county resource homes, FFHs, as well as coin-appointed special advocates. CAFPA held an in-person summer resource fair on March 11, 2023, to provide information on camps and activities and to support with the online application site. Additional outreach and partnership efforts were made to the following organizations: City of San Jose Community Resources, City of San Jose Parks, San Jose Giants, San Jose State University, as well as County's Park and Recreation. Usage and demographics. 502 unique children our youth, provided scholarships, which was 116 more children served than last year. Funding the following: 347 camp experiences, 291 enrichment activities. 581 transportations were provided to 63 children and youth to attend camps. And if we were able to see the slide, the numbers are broken down under 5. We're 54, 5 to 9, 204, age 10 to 14, 190, age 15 to 18, 54, again, for a total of 502 scholarships. Did you want to do the last one? Okay. For camps and activities, we funded nearly 200 different camps and activities. The most popular camps and activities were the Boys and Girls Camp, Great America, Raging Waters, and Waterworks Aquatics swim lessons. As to the outcomes and results, 272 caregivers were surveyed, which is 36% response rate, 96% SCEA enriched child summer, 91% said the experience was great, 96% will definitely use this next year, 98% had a positive impact on behavior over the summer for the children, 98% were very satisfied or satisfied with CAFPA's assistance, 5-star rating for camps and activities, and 72% heard about the summer camp program through CAFPA. That concludes our presentation, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. And just as a little bit of background for Sylvia, we started this, what year did we start this? Does somebody remember?
It was 4 years ago,
4 years ago.
pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, the 19th.
Yeah, and so this came out of, we had a joint foster youth task force, and one of the big issues that the foster families raised was the expense of summer programming and its accessibility. And so we created this scholarship program. And one of the things that I was very mindful of, and I will just say this again, is that I want to make sure that our foster children are treated the way we would treat our own children during the summer, and making sure that these programs are available to them. What I was interested in, I had two questions that I would be very curious to learn your perspective on, all of you. One is that, for 15 to 18-year-olds, I know we were trying to find things that they were interested in, like baseball camp, football camp, other kinds of sporting camps. And I'm wondering, could you talk just a little bit about what that age group was most interested in accessing, like their 54 participants?
I also have a teenager at home, and I know that for most of the teenagers, they were getting the Great America passes. For next summer, I focused on getting a list together for LIT programs, CIT programs, and really focused on getting programs available and accessible for our teenagers for next year.
So one recommendation, and this was just a thought, that and we haven't done it yet, but I'd be happy to help with this, is that convening, like Stanford has a summer program for baseball. The Giants, I don't know if they did it this year, but they used to have a summer program for baseball. And I think what we have to figure out is, what are those appealing options, and then talking to those different providers to make sure that we have accessibility there, that they set aside slots if necessary, because I think there are a lot of young people that would attend something they thought was worth their time versus where they feel like they're being babysat. And, that's feedback I got from my child, actually. And I signed him up for every kind of camp you can imagine, and then let them help us choose what camps. And so I'm excited that we're talking to the parents. I'd also be interested in talking to the youth about what they would or wouldn't want to participate in. And there are other kinds, like we can partner with the tech, because they do some that are for older kids. And and I'd be very interested in helping with that. But I'd like to talk to them about what they would like to do. Soccer, I know, was really popular. Basketball. So would be interested in maybe reaching out to young people, but also talk. In fact, you know what? We have some young people we've been meeting with on a number of other issues that are like dealing with fentanyl and asking them questions. We should actually have a conversation with them, Amy. Add this to the maybe 10 minutes of each of the meetings that we're doing with those young folks on drugs and, like our education program, because I'd be interested in getting their take on it.
And Chair Chavez and Vice Chair Arenas, we can also follow up with those that participated and have some conversation with them just to get their perspective as well. So.
And then on the Great America, how do you choose what it's okay to get passes for? So there's Great America, and what else? I saw Raging Waters and.
Raging Waters.
That was pretty much the majority was the Great America passes. But, on another note, I have to say, we developed that new partnership with Maker Nexus. And my teenager, my 16-year-old, she was able to go to a week of digital painting. My 13-year-old was able to go to welding. And so the Hop, Skip, Drive transportation was really helpful because they're located in Sunnyvale, and I'm in downtown San Jose. So Hop, Skip has been really helpful. I had a teenager who was going to the Trio Evergreen program in Evergreen, and then I have my son going to the Breakthrough program in San Jose. So I had 3 kids going 3 different places, so the Hop, Skip, Drive was really helpful on an off note. But the Maker Nexus is a great program. However, their programs are in the high $600 to $800 a week range. So that pretty much maximized, their scholarship allotment.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because that was actually one of my concerns, is that I did not want to cap the amount that kids use so that we weren't taking them out of opportunities that are important, like NASA does a camp. What that should mean for us is that we're having conversations with those camps early so we can negotiate a price that allows us to have more kids participate, and with being able to share, hey, here's how many kids we can actually have available if you all will do the camp. I think we'd be in a different situation to negotiate. So I was very concerned about not capping kids. And here's the main reason. We know that when you're young, that being busy is really critical. And, for a lot of parents, and I only have one child, so I had a different opportunity, but we spread whatever we were going to spend that summer, we spread it out over the summer. And so I am concerned if we're capping, and I don't want us to do that, especially without having conversations with families about what the needs of that child are. And as an example, there are some camps that are available for children who are disabled. Bless you. Oh, excuse me. And they're expensive because they have a lot more services around every child. And there's some beautiful camps in Santa Cruz. I think actually, I feel like one of the CAPCA parents is the one who introduced me to it, that we sent them information as well. So I think we should, because remind me, what did we have allotted for the program overall in the budget? Was it like 750?
The exact amount? Give me 1 second. I'm not sure of the exact, you're talking about the total amount?
Right,
Yeah.
because I thought we increased it from, we did 500,000 for a couple of years, and then we increased it, I thought, to 750, and I could ask
No, it
myself.
wasn't that much.
It wasn't that.
And-
We only
and
had 420, I think.
I think it was 4 something, and then,
We used money from that wasn't spent?
no, it never rolled, nothing rolled over. And then we were given another amount, but we didn't actually get it approved until August. And unfortunately, by then, our programs are funded and the kids are heading back to school. So I kind of want to look at that too, to make sure that we get that funding up front so that we know, because already camps are filling. And I just want to mention one thing, that the team that's working on this program, they're wonderful about doing the outreach and finding programs that we can partner with, that some programs that are free, so it gives us money actually to use on other things too. For
That's
other kids.
excellent,
So
yeah.
they've been great about finding things like that, so that money stretches as far as we can for as many children.
Thank you.
So the original amount was 420,000. Then the secondary amount was 164,000, which it was increased from.
So what I'm going to ask us to take a look at is what we did relative to our referrals that got supported by the board, because there's a different amount I have in my head, and it could be really wrong, but I want to take a look at it, and I'll just alert staff that I actually think this is one of the most important partnerships we have with our foster care families is this summer engagement. We want to deal with brain drain, we want to deal with safety, we want to do all those things. And I also just want to acknowledge that Skip, that program actually came again from the foster families. That was a recommendation that they made. That was part of the foster youth task force as well. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague to ask some questions, and then I'm going to make a motion.
So one of the things that the city of San Jose shifted in the last couple of years is also offering scholarships to residents, specifically in the youth programs. You mentioned in your report that you had some additional outreach efforts with the city of San Jose community centers, like Emma Prush, like Almaden. What does it mean when you say outreach efforts? Like, what does that look like?
Well, we made a connection with Maria DeLeon with the San Jose Parks and Recs just to discuss, how we could support each other. And I know that San Jose Parks and Recs, they pretty much offer 100% scholarship to our youths that are eligible in their programs. And so they fully fund most of their programs and stuff. So we're just trying to figure out how do we partner with them, because they also manage, Emma Prush, Happy Hollow, the Almaden area as well too. So we had a Zoom call maybe about a month ago, and we're trying to figure out how we can support. But like I said, they have their own program as well too,
Yeah, and I'll just add, we had a little bit of a challenge because when we started the program, we went to San Jose first and sat with them because what I thought was that we could use their camps as the base. And we had a difficult time being able to appropriately track how kids were able to access it. I think that all, because of what the city wanted us to do was make sure that families could go online. For a lot of our families, that was difficult. They didn't have a credit card or anything. So we had been trying to work out like if we could use a code, right? And that would make it easier to be able to use a phone number. But I think, and I'm excited about that you're talking to Maria, because I think this is an opportunity to re-engage that
That's
discussion.
a great idea. Yeah.
So both chair and vice chair, the way in which I believe CAFPA and Denise can also speak to this is looking at a overarching process that we can not only utilize the funding that is supported through the SEA program, but also look at opportunities where there are already programs out there that particular youth can participate in for free and or at a reduced rate. So those are some of the conversations that we're having now, as well as looking at new partnerships that we can look at with other providers. So.
Great. That's exactly where I was going with this this comment, as well as I know that we are going to inquire what our youth like, and I think we pretty much recognize some of the more popular ones, right? And so if it would be safe to say sports and fitness is one area of interest, not for everybody, but certainly it is popular. And I wonder what we've done around gym memberships for youth. Is that something that we've explored yet?
We were able to send a few students to boxing, a lot of diverse boxing courses and stuff like that.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, well, and and what I was thinking about, Cindy, is that the community centers can offer specific classes of interest, right? So we could, like if you mentioned soccer was something that was really popular, we could offer like the city of San Jose could offer a specific class in a very strategic location that we know is going to get offered during the fall or the summer or the early fall or midsummer, right? So we know when to anticipate that. We know that we're going to enroll a certain amount of kids. They could do an extra class for us. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially with the city of San Jose. I don't know what the majority of the area in terms of where the kids are coming from, and doesn't mean that they have to stay in San Jose if they are coming from San Jose. But certainly we could meet their needs with classes that we know they're interested in, right? Instead of having them look for it, because it could get a little discouraging, right? Oh, it's not the time that I want. It's not at the blah, 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 blah. Because we've all done that with our own kids, and we know, you all know what that looks like, right? You have three different locations. That would really drive me crazy. So I'm glad that you were able to get all the logistics sorted out. I just think that I'm excited about the next step. So if you could tell us how we could support you and it sounds like Maria de Leon she's fabulous, by the way. She was my boss when I first started at the city of San Jose when I was in my 20s.
That's awesome. That's so funny.
Yeah, she still looks like she's in her 20s, that woman. But
You know,
anyways, yes.
I'm sorry, so, the conversation ended where we were having discussions, and, their point was, well, do we use all of your funds first, or how do we, diversify and figure out the logistics, and we're like, well, let's use your funds first,
Well, I
so-
think there's an opportunity to leverage
Right.
the resources
yeah,
that
so
we all have,
definitely.
right? Obviously, everybody's going to try to protect their resources, but I think the question is how do we leverage the pot of money that you have, the pot of money that they have, and then bring in those providers like the earthquakes to bring in some free sessions, right? And the level of professionalism that some of our 15 to 18-year-olds want. Maybe our younger kids are not going to be that interested in that, but certainly older kids would.
Vice Chair Arenas, one next step that we can definitely focus in on, I know CAFPA has been talking about this, is really having a clear conversation with the different providers in regards to what are opportunities out there, like you're speaking to, as to leveraging funding, as well as just what are some of the things that we can do year-round and not just in
Yes.
summer. So
I
those
love
are
it.
some things that we're looking at. I
Yeah.
think you asked for what can you and Chair Chavez do. I know Chair Chavez has offered suggestions in the past that we followed up on. So definitely any information or linkages that you all have are definitely information we can utilize to build out the SEA program.
Yeah, that would be great. And I know that we have our chairs, we're going to be discussing the Child and Youth Master Plan, which is something that that conversation started on the city side, and now being on this end of it, we know that the city of San Jose, just like the county, can't provide every program and service that our youth actually need, but we can identify those assets in our community and fulfill all of the needs of our youth by doing so, right? So I think you're on to the right path, and I think it'll probably lead to the Child and Youth Master Plan integration.
Discussion. Yeah, that's actually an excellent point.
Yes, and
Anything
I would,
else?
just one more thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry. I just don't know where we kind of sit with looking at like winter camps and, they have those weeks off. You were just talking about daycare and how hard it is to find.
Yes.
And with weeks off during the school year, those working parents struggle with that also.
Yes, they do.
And if we could offer eventually camps to those children that are going to be left for the week while their parents work and have the week off, we would love to do that. This has kind of turned into a 12-month program, as you know. It started out as a few months during the summer, and now we've expanded it both directions so that we make sure that we could get kids signed up. Camps are already starting to sign up, so we've been looking at those and making sure that our families are connected with those. But I really would like to explore spring breaks, winter breaks,
You know,
Thanksgiving
one
breaks.
of the things that I always thought, and this is something that we grew on the city side, is the ROC program, which is the after-school program on site at some of the schools, and which also have scholarships available to folks. One of the things that I love to do, Chair, is to bring in tutoring onto the ROC programs, because they're up until 6 p.m. And that's during the time that the kids could actually get their homework done, because afterwards, you go home, their dinner's going to get done, and all kinds of other things are going to maybe distract the child and the parent from being together and doing the homework, or maybe the resource isn't there for either one of them. So that is another area that I think that you could potentially grow with the city of San Jose, is having some of the ROC programs be those winter kind of holding the spot for kiddos on campus at some of the schools, if they would, kind of forfeit some of their facility costs and all that. I think there's some real potential there, and it's a place where our parents can trust our kids to be at. And they may already have locations set up, because they already have like a classroom that's set up for the after-school program, so that's their classroom, that's where all the kids go. Anyways, that's just another idea, I think, now that you mentioned that, Denise, I think that's great.
So as a next step on this, first, thank you very much for the work. And I reread the staff report, and my brain was wrong about the math. And I know why now, because I was looking at the COVID number too, and thinking that we had actually done something we hadn't done during COVID. But what I would want to recommend is we'll receive the report, and through the Office of the County Executive, one request I would like to make is that it may make sense to have a meeting with the leadership of, re-engage the leadership of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services at the city with all of you, and in part because it may give us an opportunity to do a little recalibration both on the next item, intern and earn, and on this item, in terms of, the city's had lost a lot of its community centers and stuff. So when we first started this program, we were very focused on Happy Hollow and a few other things that have sort of changed. After we do the joint meeting with the city of San Jose, as part of that meeting, I think it would be worth us doing a little bit of an asset analysis for this targeted group of young people, so we know what resources are available on their side, what resources are available on our side for both programs. Because unfortunately, we tried to blend them a few years ago, and it's probably time to try to take a look at that again, like I said, for both programs. And that even includes, for example, we are investing in some after-school programming too. And this goes back to a discussion that we've been having about right-sizing, what should the city be doing, what should we be doing, where are the funds that are available, that, and having all of those discussions. So instead of coming to a conclusion today, I will just alert the staff that I will want to have this discussion as part of our mid-year budget, but I would like to do that really informed by feedback from the city of San Jose staff and the county staff working together to give us a joint presentation on what we could and should be doing. And I think it will be a natural, and I'm really glad you mentioned it, Sylvia. I completely forgot we're meeting with them in a month. But that after we hear from our own departments talking together at our joint meeting, that may be the appropriate time to take that next step. And actually with probation too. Like, we've got a lot of money mixed in together and a lot of different kids that we're all trying to support. Okay, so I don't think we need to take an action, because this is just a receiver report, and we're not giving direction. We'll wait till the joint meeting to do that.
We do have a request to speak from a member of the
I'm
public on
sorry.
Zoom.
I thought I'd already asked that. Thank you.
The next speaker is resident. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello. I think one thing that's lacked from this report, and I know we're not going to vote on it right now or make a decision on it, but I know that I think it was a year ago in one of the school programs, not a school program, in a program, an after-school program, there was a sexual assault. It was in San Jose, I believe. And I just want to make sure that in this report, that we're addressing safety for our children. Because, I mean, if we're not addressing safety, then we shouldn't really be having these programs. And I want to make sure that we have a system in place where parents can feel safe in reporting if it potentially something, God forbid, happens, that we can report it in a safe manner. And let me give you an example. I did report that my children were being sexually abused. And when I reported it, the person involved had me assaulted repeatedly. And I believe this is unacceptable. I was assaulted so many times through poison that my testicles have atrophied. The shape of my face has changed. All my organs are damaged. And I put this all online. If you want to look at it for an example to put in your report, if you Google Valerie Houghton poison, you'll see the picture of what happened to my face. I mean, I'm completely disfigured because of this, because I reported it. And I just want to make sure that this committee and the people who prepared this report can add some kind of safety measures so this doesn't happen to other parents. Thank you very much.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you. And thanks for catching that. I appreciate it. We're going to move on to item 10. And I want to thank you, Kafka, for your good work. Christine, thank you so much. We're going to go to item 10, and this is intern and earn. And I'd like to ask the staff if they could do their presentation on this item. Welcome.
Hello. Oh, is the mic on? Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez, Vice Chairperson Arenas, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present on Intern and Earn. My name is Angela Shing. I'm the Director of the Department of Employment and Benefit Services. We will be providing a highlight on Intern and Earn fiscal year 22-23, and also have a video today to share about the voices of the interns, the youth in the Intern and Earn program. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So the Intern and Earn program offers opportunities for career exploration. Youth are provided with case management, access to job readiness, and skills training workshops to develop critical skills which help them with their current job assignment and to enhance their employability in the future. You can see that Intern and Earn actually has two components, Intern and Earn 1.0 as well as Intern and Earn 2.0. The main differences between the two programs is that Intern and Earn 1.0 actually targets youth enrolled in CalWORKs, CalFresh, and foster care is actually an 8-week program, where Intern and Earn 2.0 is actually a six-month program targeting specifically foster youth that are not working or attending school to set them up for self-sufficiency outcomes. Other than that, the two programs are very similar, offering hourly wages, 30 hours per week, and targeting youth in the 16 to 24-year age bracket. So this slide really goes through some general statistics about each program. The 1.0 program had 333 participants, which exceeds our goals. The 88% of those participants actually completed their internship, which we're very excited about. The Intern 2.0 had 37 participants, which exceeded our 30 youth per year goal. At the conclusion of the program, 24% of the participants are attending college, 22% of the interns are working and going to school, 16% are working, and 35% are continuing to explore options. So for the best part of our presentation today, here are some quotes from our actual youth voices. But really what we wanted to highlight is a video that we have just really showing the youth voices themselves, which I think is a very powerful video. So we're going to go ahead and show you that video. Thanks for your patience.
May I just make a recommendation? First, I would love to hear their gorgeous voices, but maybe it's something you could email the entire committee, just if it's not able to work.
Yeah, I apologize for that. For the
No
technical
problem. Sometimes the
difficulties, yeah.
gremlins get us.
Yes. But yeah, thank you for that. I definitely encourage you to watch the video. I believe the interns themselves put it together. It is a wonderful video, and it just showcases the experiences they had and them themselves from their voice. The intern program really, really is from the youth themselves and generated from the youth themselves and what they desire from the program. I think the video does a great job highlighting that. With that, thank you so much. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but really want to thank you for your support of the internship program. It's really because of you that it's been such a success. Also from the young adults themselves, and from I want to make sure to thank the staff of the internship program. I know you guys have been a supporter. I think it started in 2014 or 13. It's been around for a good bit.
Yeah, this was actually, I was also going to recommend that if you can, send the video over to Senator Cortese.
Yeah.
One, he's been a champion for our foster youth, but the other is that this is a program that, I can't remember which of us brought a referral on it, but I think might have been him or me, but if you could send it to him, I would appreciate it. I do want to just say a very special thank you to the staff that works on this program. It's so, so important. And I have just a few requests I'd like to make, and I'd like to ask for an off-agenda report that includes an annual breakdown of the numbers of unique participants and which SSA programs they're enrolled in and their ages, the number of participants who participated either in either or both programs and how many times they've participated. And then I'm very interested in the staff's thoughts on how and why enrollment participation have changed. I recognize that some of this will be obviously a change because we have less people working in an office, and we may have actually lost some of our employers. But whatever those issues are, I'd really like to make sure that the board is informed about them. So if there's a way that we can support and help, that would be ideal. I'd also like information related on how our Intern and Earn program at our summer enrichment camp staff collaborate, where there's overlap and that leverage. And part of the reason I'm interested in getting that in writing is I think it would help me understand what kind of partnership we should or could have with the city of San Jose and frankly Gilroy and Morgan Hill as well, and maybe even Milpitas in the future. And then I'd really be interested in thoughts and options from your team about how we can make Intern and Earn programming available to CalWORKs, CalFresh, and foster youth year-round. And I know we have that 6-month program, but for a lot of our kids, they actually do need to work full-time. And I did have one young person not participate in Intern and Earn because they didn't want to lose the job that they had doing fast food because they were flexible with their schedule. So I would just like to make sure that we don't leave those children out. So that would be my motion.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll second that. The other item that I wanted to ask about this, and I love this year-round idea. I think it's wonderful to expose our youth to some really a great pipeline of different kind of civic duties that involve the county, right? And so I had requested for my office to also participate. I'd love to have my office. I requested it earlier this year. It didn't happen. But I'd love to participate in this upcoming year or whenever we get it initiated. If it's year-round, I'd love to have it year-round. I think we all love interns, and it's wonderful to be able to not just have them for an 8-week window where we are trying to jam all of the wonderful opportunities to be a public servant, which is, I think, very hard to do in an 8-week program. I think people get more starstruck when they're at Google or Yahoo or someplace like that, right? But for an 8-week program, it's just a teaser. And this is one of the things that I had actually some concerns about when I was at the city of San Jose. We had a program like this, and it was with a lot of the big employers, but it's kind of like a window into a corporation that they're never going to be able to get into, especially if they're off track and their grades aren't looking so hot, right? And so it's almost cruel to say, hey, you get to work here for an 8-week program, but you don't really have some solid steps forward in order to make it through that door on your own. And so it's actually one of the reasons why we started talking more seriously about the Child and Youth Master Plan, because we wanted to make sure that we scaffolded their growth, and that we didn't have all the programs. The City of San certainly does not have all the programs involved to get them ready to earn a career, but there's other options available. And so I'm wondering, here's my question. I'm wondering, I think you said there was 12, I can't remember, whatever the number is in terms of the employers. How are we working with the big employers to broaden where our kids are working? And second, what are we asking those employers to invest so that they have not just somebody who staples and sorts things out for an 8-week program, but that they're really investing some money into our local residents? And it's one of the questions I actually asked Google, because I want to make sure that they're creating a pipeline and they're not just bringing in, importing some of their talent from outside areas.
Yeah, that's a great question. We could definitely include that in the off agenda. We do have an entire group in our employment services group that's dedicated towards recruiting employers. My employment service director would be better to answer that, but I know we have tried, and there are consistent efforts to recruit those bigger employers, and I think they would be best to answer that. So we'll definitely include those details in the off agenda. I've definitely made note that you're interested in having an intern. I'm very excited so thank you for that interest. So we will definitely make sure to make note of that. I know Supervisor Chavez has hosted interns in the past. They've had great experiences, so we'd love to have that interest. So thank you for that.
Yeah. The last thing, we took this tour over in Gilroy High School, and one of the things that they have at the Wellness Center is, and I think this is very similar in many wellness centers, is they have like peer support folks. You can't call them a counselor, but it's another student listening to another student, not necessarily providing some counseling, but certainly just listening. And I wonder if there's any opportunities for us to maybe integrate some of that into the wellness centers as the wellness centers grow, and I'm sure that there's
as an employment.
as an employment,
what
yeah,
a
like
great
you're getting
idea.
paid to listen, right? You're doing it with the kindness of your heart, and probably you have that level of empathy, and you're good at it. But how about if you get paid for that? I think that would be another really great option.
It's really interesting that, I think that's a brilliant idea, and it's interesting that you say that, because we were meeting with a bunch of young people, talking to them about fentanyl and meth and some other things. And one of the things that our public...
Like one does.
Yeah, like what we do. And we were talking to them, we were talking to the Public Health Department is going to be, as part of one of their grants, is going to get some peer mentors. And what I hadn't thought about, what I had thought about is that for some communities, peer mentoring is easy because the young person is not encumbered with having to work.
Right.
but for a lot of our communities, that's not the case.
Right.
And so I think that would be an interesting conversation to have with behavioral health as well for the peer mentor program that they're developing around drug and alcohol prevention and education. And it's an interesting point about the wellness centers because, and I'm just not remembering, I know we don't have anybody from behavioral health, but it would be really interesting to take a look at any place we're using peer mentorship within the county as an opportunity for them, or peer counseling, or, you know, because I think the days of having unpaid internships for the communities that we represent are just so long gone, and it's such a big divide between whether or not it's a significant barrier. I think is the point you're raising, which I love.
Yes, and it's one of the most effective ways for kids to reach out to other kids. I mean, they certainly don't want to talk to us. I can verify that with my own teenager. No, I'm kidding. He's great. I know. I do this all the time. Poor guy. He's really a really great kid. Put that in the record, clerk. The other thing that I was just thinking about, I know, when you were talking, Chair, was I was thinking about the item that we discussed earlier about the food and how do we get our kiddos to learn how to cook from other kids, right? Because that's much better than us teaching them, because then us teaching them, that's a class. Them teaching each other is a hang or whatever. So anyways, other opportunities like this that include our high schoolers, that include our wellness centers, I think that would, for me, would really make a lot of sense, especially when it's peer-to-peer, that are very effective in terms of strategy. So that would be wonderful. And then lastly, I just want to make sure then that in that off-agenda report, we also include how we are those work site locations or employers, if they share our values of equity and inclusion and diversity, and how do we make those choices in terms of employers so that our values are also reflected in the choices that we make for our kids. Thank you.
And so I'm going to add to the motion the workplace expansion strategies, and then also the values of those workplaces to make sure their DEI work is real and meaningful. And then the expansion to look at our peer mentoring program in the wellness centers and also in through our behavioral health programming. And did I miss, what else did you? Oh, and if, to take a look at our work that we're doing with the food system work to see if there are opportunities as well for peer work that could be paid internships. All right, and we already took public comment, and we're gonna move on. We're gonna take a vote on this item.
Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez.
Yes,
Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you. And we're going to move on now to item 11. This is our Juvenile Justice Annual Report. And do you want them to do a presentation? And that's okay if they do. This one you kept off. I put it on. I think on this item, I think my vice chair would like to start with questions, unless you want to do some opening comments, and then
Sure.
we'll go right
just
to.
introduce ourselves.
Yes, please.
Sure. Hi, Mariel Caballero, Deputy Director, Probation Administration, and with me is Kimberly Jocko, who is our Program Manager 3 over Research and Development. And we're happy to take questions now.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there public comment on this item? Thank you for catching that, Sylvia.
There are no requests to speak in the room, and there are no requests to speak online.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public comment period.
Okay, it's all wonderful. One of the things that I noticed in the report was that there was an increase of infractions and status offenses, misdemeanors, and they all accounted for 61%. So 1,201 of arrest citations, which increased by 54% compared to last year. This is a huge jump for me that I've noticed. I'm certainly open to hearing how you feel about this. And one of the things that I was thinking about was how our schools are no longer having some of our public safety officers on site, and how this correlates to that. I don't know that there was any breakdown of locations, and so I was curious about what those locations are. I mean, it just seems like the violence is increased. If I were to guess, it's going to be somewhere after school, somewhere.
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Arenas. So this is actually a return to pre-pandemic levels, which is why you saw an increase compared to 2021. So during 2021, most schools were closed, and youth were not at home. And what we have heard from schools since 2022 and now in 2023, that there's actually an increase in offenses that occur on campus. And as you can see, misdemeanor assault fighting is 12% of the total misdemeanor arrests, and petty theft is 7%. So what we often see in these cases is that misdemeanor assault and fighting is actually oftentimes fights at schools. And at the very beginning of the school year in 2021, in 2022, we actually did hear that there were quite a lot of incidents. And we heard the same thing from the New San Jose Yay when they reported out just recently on their school incident, critical incident reports, that they had an increase for requests for support for critical incidents through them. So I think that this data actually correlates to that. And although there are many school districts that don't have police officers on site, it doesn't mean that police officers are never called to a school. And then I think for petty theft, that is oftentimes what we see as probably cell phone stealing or other types of small crimes, which often do occur either during school or after school.
Got it. And so I hear you loud and clear that our public safety officers, whether police, sheriff, it doesn't matter, but they are coming on campus once the administrator calls. I wonder how these are getting classified based on what the administrators are qualifying these fights to be. I think one of the areas of concern for me when we first heard that there wasn't going to be, and there wasn't going to be any on-site school liaisons from the city of San Jose, especially around Silver Creek High School, was because there were some very severe injuries in fights, not last year, but the year before. And one of the concerns that I heard from folks when I pulled people together was, how is an administrator going to decide whether this fight qualifies as a misdemeanor or a suspension or a whatever it is? You need somebody who is from public safety sector to help figure those pieces out. And so I'm wondering, how are we qualifying this for some of those schools that don't have public safety officers on site?
So these referrals can only come from law enforcement. They are not coming directly from school districts or from school administrators. So the only is someone from a police department had to fill out what's called a juvenile contact form. Referral, juvenile contact referral, a JCR, and had to identify either based on their conversation with a school administrator or based on their interviews with youth, perhaps, that a form was filled out. So we do not accept JCRs from schools directly. We only accept the ones from law enforcement.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's really great to know. So I'm going to move on to another item, but I still would like for us to, and this is, I think, in my motion to receive the report in an off-agenda report. Reflects some of the progress that's being done with the different cities, especially the ones that were mentioned such as Gilroy, Sunnyvale, Morgan Hill, and Santa Clara. Although I think that there was some issue with some of the ways, the way that the information was reported because it wasn't based on capita, per capita, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to see it per capita because I think the order of those cities would be different based on capita. And this is the top 3 cities, Chair, with the highest felony counts are San Jose, Sunnyvale, and then Gilroy. But I suspect that Gilroy would be in a different list, different order if it was based on capita, because Sunnyvale and obviously San Jose are much bigger than Gilroy.
Right.
And the same thing would be true for the most detained youth who live in San Jose, then Gilroy and Sunnyvale, Morgan Hill and Santa Clara. And for capita, I would like to see that also listed and reflected in an off-agenda report. The next item that I wanted to talk about are the 3, and help me out with this phrase, criminogenic. You say it.
Criminogenic needs.
Criminogenic needs. Okay. So I saw that for the males was emotional factors in relationship, and that's true for females and males, right? Mm-hmm. And then the last thing changed with the females to be family history problems, and then for the males, substance use, correct? And so I know that we have another item, we haven't talked about it just yet, but it's going to come around, and that's the cost of gun violence. And I think these 2 items actually should have probably been heard together, Chair, because to me it just makes sense. This is like the precursor, right? I mean, this is these kiddos are potentially on a path to taking on some weapons and involving weapons in some of their misdemeanors, or what I believe probably qualifies as felony. I don't know but I would imagine that once a weapon is involved, that raises the stakes for everyone involved. And I know that in the cost of gun violence study, one of the reasons why the youth said that they bring weapons to school is because of safety, right? It wasn't because they are planning to get into a fight, it's because they feel unsafe. So if they feel unsafe and they need to take that on themselves, I go back to the question about if they're feeling unsafe, then our schools aren't responding well enough to their safety concerns that they are taking on themselves. So how are we mitigating for not having some of the school liaisons or the safe school liaisons that they typically would have, right? That might have created a sense of safety. Or what were those elements that create those safety elements? And I don't know if you have any feedback for that, Mariel.
What I can tell you is that our NSU annual survey that we do related to community safety also bears out that young people think either know folks who are bringing guns to school or know folks who have guns for safety reasons. And as part of our NSU work at Catherine Smith, Leyva, Overfelt, and 3 schools in Gilroy Elliott, Glenview, and the third one is escaping me, maybe Gilroy High, that we actually use some of our money to support their school safety planning and help the school districts or those individual principals with either teacher training or other types of actual activities that support wellness. And that's all part of the MTSS framework. So I think you're exactly right that these young people are some may feel unsafe at school and take it upon themselves to bring weapons. This data doesn't specifically speak to that, but we have other data from our NSU that does. And I would say that it probably very much mirrors what the gun violence report has said. It's a great report. I was reading through it recently again to kind of help us frame some of the work that we're doing with NSU.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad that it's feeding that. And so back to your point, like what triggers what, right? The lack of feeling safe, does that trigger our youth to bring in those weapons? And if so, then does that increase the kind of infraction or the kind of crime that they will commit because they're bringing those items, and in case they feel threatened, now they will use those tools in a fight. So how do we get to the root of that safetiness?
Sure. So I think we're really investing in wellness supports. And
I'm sorry, you're investing in what?
We're investing in wellness supports. So things like the wellness centers. At a board meeting recently, we brought forward a request to help fund $2 million for the wellness centers. It's in addition to the $10 million that the board has allocated as ARPA funds, and those are going directly to schools where we have a higher level of juvenile offenses. So we had a list of about 10 to 15 schools that we asked for the funds to be directed to. So that's one thing that we're doing in addition to the work that we do with NSU. And then I think that around your questions related to what else we can do, I think our partnership with San Jose Yay and leveraging those, that we each have our role to play within a community, and we try to leverage and not duplicate services. So, we're not in the same places that San Jose Yay is because they have, they're doing similar work in other places. And so I think we're trying to create like a county-wide web of support for our young people. But I was just listening to NPR on my way into the office today, and they were talking about gun violence in schools. And it was a really interesting discussion about, that young people say that it's the wellness supports that are actually more helpful of like, how do you do conflict resolution? How do you have how do you have that support when you feel depressed? Because I think what the gun violence report also shows is that a high number of gun violence related deaths are suicides, right? And so it's a double-edged sword of having access to those guns. So, I think we're all trying to figure out what our place is in the continuum of services, and NSU supports all of the work that the DA's office does and also takes into account a lot of the principles that the Public Health Department has put forward.
Well, thank you, and this goes back to the criminogenic needs for males and for females, which is emotional factors and relationships. And so as you're thinking, and this I'll connect back to our gun violence study, is that when we're thinking about who do we fund and how do we fund so that we can get to the root of some of these issues? If we know what the root of some of these issues are, I mean, we're looking at the needs for males and the needs for females. And I'm glad that one report is informing another effort for you, Maria. Like you mentioned earlier, you were going through the gun violence study. I think we have to take a look at what we know. And if we know this, we know that these are the three needs for each of those, for those two categories, then we should invest that way.
Yes.
There isn't any more surveys, and I mean, sure, there's surveys. We could always do more surveys. We could always do more focus groups, but we already know what we know. And we should set up our funding in that way that supports more emotional or relationship-based programming or curriculum, and maybe at an earlier age. And I know I saw that you noted that there were limitations to the development of, because I think one of the differences was for Gilroy was gender-based violence, was domestic violence, as one of the, I don't have it with me here, but I think that was one of the differences between the three different areas, that there was more, or was this, am I getting this confused with the gun violence study? But I think that there was a domestic violence crime difference between some of those cities, and Gilroy had that for the teens and not for the rest of those city areas.
That data is not in our report, so I would say that's probably from the gun violence report.
But see how this is all interrelated?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, this is all, I mean, the gun violence is just the result of, if we don't provide those prevention and interventions now, we know what they need, and yet if we don't provide them, we know where this is all headed, right? So I think that in this off-agenda report, I'd love to see you explore the development of the domestic dating and sexual violence interventions for youth and young adults, because I think you did say in your look ahead, in terms of the highlights, that that the body of knowledge in effective interventions are very limited. And so and because we know this is specific to one area, which is Gilroy, I want to make sure that we explore those interventions, not only those effective ones, but place-based ones, right? So if you could return back with that as well.
And could I just,
Yes.
just want to highlight that is really talking about that there's no research on those specific populations. It doesn't mean that there aren't services being provided, but that the body of research is not there, not developed to say whether or not this is effective. So we are working with the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute on, and with FACES. Yes, and with Evident Change, thank you, which is the ones that put together our juvenile assessment instrument on identifying some promising practices in this area that then we can implement into our services. And in the past, we've also very much supported the public health department's injury and violence prevention through a position that specifically was related to dating and interpersonal violence. That has since been taken over by the Office of Gender-Based Violence, so yay for that, thank you. But we started out by having a position that was specifically dedicated to that work.
Got it. Okay. Well, then that makes it. I mean, that really makes sense, and that's a smooth transition there. I love that you're exploring that to see what is actually effective. We know what our kiddos need, and we know what interventions are effective, right? And so hopefully you'll get to the bottom of that and to figure out what exactly are the most effective interventions. In the meantime, I don't think we stop trying. We just start. We continue to do everything possible, which is, I'm sure, what we're all hoping for. So those are my questions. And then I would love for us to connect also, Mariel, and bring some of this information to some of our jurisdictions and those elected leaderships, because I think this makes sense for them to understand the research and all of the work that you're doing should not just be for this conversation for now. It should really feed our school systems and our intervention systems and our community-wide, in the same way that our gun violence study is also doing the same thing, right? So I'd love for us to connect and do that within South County and my district. I'd love for us to coordinate on some presentations. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we'll take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 12. The long-awaited Sarah is going to give a presentation. Let me see. And this is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive Office of Children's and Families Policy relating to fiscal year 2022-2023 annual report and work plan.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chair Chavez, Vice Chair Arenas. I have Karina Alvarez from my team who's going to run slides. So Karina also helped with the report a lot, and she has them
Welcome,
up. So-
Karina.
Okay. All right, I'll get started. Sarah Duffy, Chief Children's Officer. Very pleased to be here today to provide a report from the Office of Children and Families Policy. I'll start with an overview of our first annual report, then cover a few highlights from our work plan for the current fiscal year. To start off, the Office of Children and Families Policy vision is that all children and families in Santa Clara County have the supports needed to be safe, healthy, and successful in learning and in life. Our work plan is guided by the 3 core objectives for the office. Policy and analysis, which is following and advocating for local, state, and federal policies that will facilitate an equity-forward and data-driven agenda. Collaboration and partnerships, cultivating and increasing collaboration across county departments with external agencies and community to improve outcomes for children and families, and strategic issues and initiatives, facilitating the implementation of promising new initiatives to support and strengthen early interventions and preventative practices. And with that, we have our first annual report. In creating this report, I definitely want to thank our staff, the Division of Equity and Social Justice Communications team, Board of Supervisors, county and external partners who are leaders in all of the work supporting and serving children and families. And I'll go through some highlights from our first year. I also have hard copies of this report that I can hand out after. In terms of policy and analysis, we've been actively working with Kids in Common and the County Office of Education on the Children's Data Book, and with the Office of Budget and Analysis on the Santa Clara County Children's Budget. We've collaborated with the Intergovernmental Relations team to advocate for policies that advance the county and the Office of Children and Family Policy priorities, and we worked with them to send letters of support for 11 bills last year. Much of our work relates to collaboration and partnership, and highlights include participation on several local advisory and planning bodies and in many different areas of child and well-being. And I'll highlight one example. The Office of Children and Family Policy has been working with school districts, youth advocates, and the County Office of Education and Probation departments to build on an existing memorandum of understanding to support successful transition of youth receiving education in juvenile detention facilities back to their local school districts. So that's an example of a very collaborative process. Another really exciting example is that in 2023, the Youth Task Force transitioned to the Office of Children and Families Policy, and in partnership with board offices and the YTF, we've worked to update the application to make it more youth accessible and equity focused, and we've welcomed 7 new members to the YTF this year. Okay, in the next few slides, I'm going to highlight some work related to our strategic initiatives. These initiatives are actually grounded in 3 areas that were identified in the Children's Roadmap to Recovery, which was passed by the Board of Supervisors in spring 2022. And as a reminder, those 3 areas were: first, recovery for the early learning and childcare workforce essential to child learning and the ability of families to return to work; second, supports for children who lost a parent or caregiver to COVID-19; and third, expansion of wellness centers at schools. So those 3 areas have really driven our strategic issues and initiatives. In 2022, our office developed contracts with First 5 to implement 3 initiatives addressing the shortage in childcare workers, aiming to increase families' access to quality childcare, particularly in areas that serve low and middle income families where childcare deserts exist. So you can see here 3 examples: the TK Equity Initiative, Apprenticeships, and the Shared Services Alliance are all designed in partnership with First 5 and local colleges to support a diverse group of childcare providers, maintaining and growing the local workforce. We also have been working quite a bit on the Child Care Infrastructure Grants Program. On February 28th, the Board of Supervisors approved $15 million in Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds for a Child Care Infrastructure Grant Program with the goal of expanding family access to quality child care. The grant funds will result in added classroom spaces, enhanced facilities, and accessible hiring of childcare staff across the county. We've been partnering with the Valley Health Foundation to administer the grant program using an equity-grounded approach and grant disbursement approach. Okay, we've been overseeing 3 initiatives last year related to child and family mental health and well-being. In partnership with Behavioral Health Services, we've worked with the County Office of Education on a program creating technical assistance, training, and consulting services to support expansion of Medi-Cal billing by Santa Clara County school districts. We've worked with Behavioral Health Services Department and a consultant to develop an operational plan for school-based wellness centers, and guided by that plan, the county has allocated $12 million in funding for school-based wellness center expansion. And our office worked with the Bill Wilson Center for Living with Dying to address recovery needs of children, youth, and young adults who have experienced loss of a parent or caregiver to COVID-19. We've also championed programs that piloted family navigation to assist families in finding services they need. These pilots have included the Universal Access Pilot, which was established in 2018 and ended in 2023 as a partnership approach to facilitate family access to community prevention supports, Family Navigation for Care Court, aimed to reduce rates of chronic absenteeism in Santa Clara County, and the Guaranteed Basic Income Pilots. We've been working with partners to support Guaranteed Basic Income Pilots specifically for young mothers and former foster youth, and really helping build out evaluation plans for those programs. Okay, as we launch or have launched into our current fiscal year, we've created a new work plan that identifies current priorities and projects for our office. It is attached to the file and includes a detailed summary, but I'll highlight 3 key initiatives. We'll be engaging in a strategic planning process, including a catalog of local data related to needs and county services and recommendations for county policy actions related to where we see gaps and redundancies in services. A partnership with Facilities and Fleet, conducting a thorough early child care and education facilities and community investment analysis. Again, the child care infrastructure grant making and workforce programs I described earlier, and also really working with our youth task force to build out and help support their agenda, which focuses this fiscal year or academic year on mental health and well-being of students. So really working in partnership with them, as well as with Behavioral Health Services Department, to bring youth voice into that space. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about our annual report and work plan.
Wow, congratulations. Let me start to see if there's anybody on who would like to speak to us who's online or in the room.
There are no requests in the room, and there are no requests to speak online.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I want to start off by just acknowledging a couple things. One is that we announced your office, the idea behind your office, in January of 2020. And I was chair of the board at the time, and my theme was everything all at once. I had no idea we were going to have COVID, so I still have some guilt over that. But one of the things that was most interesting to me is that the deficit of having somebody in the organization who could really bring all of these different policy initiatives was really very glaring and evident in a lot of different ways. So one, I just want to say what you've managed to accomplish, and then it took us forever to get you on board. I mean, and again, because of COVID. And so I think there was such a high expectation for the amount of activity and work that you would be doing when you arrived in your team, which I think is you and 2 people.
No, we have a team of 8.
Oh, thank goodness. For a while, I felt like it was just you and I imagined you in a little boat with one paddle, just going upstream. But what I wanted to just acknowledge is that I think this venture of being so concrete about the activities and the outcomes of those activities is exactly what we need in order to really move the dial on a number of issues that we talked about today, and I mean, frankly, every one of these meetings. I could and talk a lot about the details of your report, but I actually have a broader question that I wanted to raise with you. And Sylvia, I'm really interested in your feedback on this. So we are doing a joint meeting with the city of San Jose in November, and at that, initially when we had decided to do that meeting, I was really interested in them seeing the children's budget, because one of the things I'd be interested in determining is whether or not the city of San Jose and other cities could start to use a children's budget as a framework for us to be able to prioritize more activities for youth, but also with an intent to getting much more in the prevention business and the early intervention business instead of, which is what I think counties should be doing anyway, which is part of the reason I was so interested in developing the office. So I'd asked if you could report on that, and I didn't know, are you gonna, and I'm sorry I'm asking this in real time, but is this something also that you were gonna present, was your work plan at that same meeting? Or was it just the budget?
Yeah, thanks for that. So for that meeting and that agenda and actually presentation, I've been working closely with the city of San Jose on. I'll give a very high-level overview of our office, and then we are going to delve into kind of the children's budget, the main categories of spending, and then talk about specific programs that we're hoping that the city of San Jose can tap into, either, in terms of making sure their residents are aware of and connected to those programs, or if those programs have information that would be really valuable, thinking of like public health programs, for example, to families and children in San Jose, making sure they know about that. We have shared the kind of backup spreadsheet with the city of San Jose of that feeds into the children's budget so that they see how it's organized. I think it'll be really helpful to them in thinking about if they want to create something similar as a tool.
One request I would make is that if you can, as we're looking at I do recognize the roles are different, and one reason I think that it may be important to highlight your work plan would be so we can nest in what we're doing versus what the city's doing, because I think that actually may assist us in the next phases of really diving into a deeper partnership. And what I mean specifically is that the city of San Jose, frankly, under your leadership, invested quite a lot in, Sylvia, under your leadership, invested quite a lot in childcare. We're actually following suit there, which I think is really important. But as an example, while we're funding the childcare investments, having them be able to speed up the permitting process, because that cost is so significant in terms of how we're waiting. Like, those are, to me, really good examples of where we can be a resource in one area, but we actually need, not just the city of San Jose, but all of our cities to be able to move more quickly on the permitting side of that, and whether or not there's a way to do, to speed that up. So anyway, as you work with the staff, I'd be very interested in you pulling out, at least in the biggest initiatives you have, if there's concrete roles and opportunities for us to partner in a way that actually speeds up the issues that we're most working on. And I'm going to stop there. I actually have a lot of questions, but I'm going to let Sylvia, since she's asks almost as many as I do, which I love. I'm going to let my colleagues start, and if there's time, I'll ask. But if not, I think what I would like to do is, again, through the county exec's office, is just take a look a little deeper level at the joint meeting we're going to have, so that we can think a little bit about how to move people through, and then see if we can get some agreements at the end of that. Thank you.
I have no questions. No, I'm kidding.
You're going to be like, April Fool's.
I'm like, I do not ask a lot of questions.
That's not bad.
All right. Actually, I do have some. Okay. So one of the things that, and this is kind of, I'm seeing a theme here in terms of creating an inventory of what we have available, right? This is being done through the gun violence study. This is being done through the South County in my district, the South County Youth Task Force, right? The city of San Jose and the work that we did, that kind of left behind, is doing some of that is really the Children's and Youth Master Plan is an attempt to do a bit of an inventory and to identify what's missing so that we can plug in the holes, and also to standardize the strategies that are effective to engage our children and youth in the different ways that we do in the programs, as we didn't really have that in place. That was more through like logic model doing, which I know you don't like, but we did it anyways because we needed to figure out what works, right? What works for our kiddos. And so one of the things that I was wondering about is how are we taking all of this information? How are we pulling all of this? I think we've been doing asset mapping for like forever. When I worked for this for First Five, of course, we wanted to do asset mapping to identify all of the agencies that were providing services for children under the age of 6, and then childcare providers, and then for different reasons. And so I think it's a never-ending effort, and certainly I think it's needed right now because post-pandemic there's some agencies that just didn't survive, right? And so there's services that are absolutely missing for some of our kiddos. So have you thought about how we could, and not as gatekeepers, but how do we hold this information? Because one of the things that I had thought about for the city of San Jose, in the same way that First Five is a bit of a gatekeeper, but maybe not a gatekeeper, but gate protector of children under the age of 6, and they're an advocate, right? And so all of the programming kind of fits underneath them. They do a lot of, they're very strategic in their leadership, right? And so how do we do the same thing for our kids if we break it down for our school age kids and then for our teens and young adults? How will we do that for this county and bring everybody's efforts together? Because it feels like it's duplicative, right? We're all doing the same thing. How do we work with one another so that we are not duplicating efforts? And then also creating a holder, if you will, of the resources.
Thanks, Supervisor. That's a great question and something that I think about a lot. The children's budget, as it is right now, with kind of the list of all of the different programmatic investments and initiatives by each department, I think it provides a very good starting place for that. And this year, what our office is going to attempt to do is actually ask departments, and we're working with the Office of Budget Analysis right now to think about what is the best way to collect this information, but actually to start to provide some additional details on each of those investments, breaking it down by some of the categories that you described, like age, and actually to start to we're going to try to categorize some things by themes, types of programming, and even try to collect some contract information for each of those as well. And what that should provide, I think, is a resource that allows us to more quickly kind of look at what we're funding and where we may be seeing some space where we need to invest more, some areas where we think that there's some critical issues that are surfacing, like, for example, gun violence. And what do we have that might be addressing some of the root causes for that, and where might we need more information? So that's our attempt. It seems like it would be a really simple thing to do, but I think the categorization and collection of information when you have over $1 billion in resources is actually going to be a pretty heavy lift. So that's one of our projects for this year, is to start to work with some departments and figure out how we can collect that. Then we can start, when we work with partners like cities, look at what we're funding, look at what communities we're funding, see what they're funding, and I think we'll have really rich information to start to look at that more closely.
Just as a reminder, the SSA had a contract with a consultant that was putting some of this information together. Are you aware of that?
I am, yes.
And is that contract still in play? What happened to it?
I'll defer. I think it is, but I'll defer to Daniel.
Yeah, we still have that contract in place.
Did they ever finish the project?
I actually need to go double check.
I'm not sure, but they were going very deep into the contracts and actually looking at the contracts in detail. So
Okay, so here's
yeah.
my only point. I went to a workshop on that before COVID. So this has been going on, this goes back to your point, and it was actually the question that was, you asked earlier about the contracts report, Sylvia. Like and they had a whole, like, I don't even want to use the word logic model, but they had a very particular way of collecting the data and being able to visualize the data. I would, for one, just be interested in, if we still have the contract, did the product ever happen? And the thing that would be of most interest to me is there are kind of three parts to this challenge, which is, and I've never understood why we don't just embed in every single contract that the way information needs to be conveyed to whatever website or whatever Google Doc or whatever it is that breaks out the questions that we all ask 1,000 times a day, which is what age is, what's the service that's provided, frankly, how many units of service, because the other problem is we talk a lot about services without quantifying them, and that really is of zero value, literally. Like, when we get reports that don't have numbers in them, it just makes me scratch my head, like, really, anyway. So one, I'd be interested in knowing if that occurred. But second, and really this is something I would just share, Greta, with you and Sylvia too, is that there are newer technologies that are pulling together, new software that are pulling together data and information that allow it to be manipulated in real time, that can attach like if you wanted to look at age, what are all the things we're doing within this age that have nutrition, how much money is being spent, and what the sources of funds are. And one of them, the one company that you and I had a conversation with, has that capacity as well. But there are new technologies that I think are software packages that I think are really worth us doing some sort of RFI or RFQ, because, and then embedding in our contracts what information we want people to report and how, so we're not doing this same discussion 20 years from now. And by the way, one of the first meetings I ever had here at this committee, I think I was sitting with Dave, and Dave asked the same question you did about the contracts at the beginning of this meeting. So I know it's a long time, and you're right, it's not easy, but what I'd like us to see is if there's a possibility of doing some sort of an RFI or an RFQ that just helps us see if that if it's advanced enough that someone's using it somewhere that we would be able to access.
Well,
So thank you for opening that.
on the technology question, I can just jump in and say, and the board will hear more about this in the coming months, but we're embarking on this big ERP process internally to really look at a lot of our core systems, what the end of life is for a lot of those core systems, how can we ensure that any future technology investments for those core central systems have a lot more functionality in the vein of what you're talking about, and also have the ability to talk better with one another. We have a lot of more fundamental challenges that we're trying to tackle through some of those system replacement efforts, really consistent with prior observations by the board, and certainly constant observations by our own staff, where we struggle to be able to extricate from lots of complex systems the data needed to pull together for some of the reporting that the board is rightly asking for. So I think some of those technology opportunities absolutely exist in lots of different products from lots of different vendors on the market, and we're really looking forward to availing ourselves of some of the opportunities that the end of life for some of our prior system investments may bring, to have much improved technology just to perform our basic functions, but also for some of those external reporting opportunities.
That's helpful, thank you. I didn't mean to jump in, but that was.
No, that's okay. So it sounds like first you'll identify, and then you're I know that there's a process to this, and we're going to follow you on this process. And in the meantime, we'll provide all kinds of suggestions. But sometimes it's the same suggestions that that you've heard before, because this is not new to us, right? We've done this in different fields, and I mentioned First Five because First Five did that in the area for agencies that serve children under the age of 6. I mean, they created a system where they could share information, where they could because at the beginning it was like, oh, we can't do this because we can't share informations over platforms and blah, 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 blah. But really what would happen was the conversations first got started, right? And the partnerships and the need to be integrated in a way to talk with one another was so important that we found a way. We found a technology that actually worked. We found the partners that we needed to work with, right? And now there's a whole system that's there for children under the age of 6, and I'd love to see that also be a possibility for children under the, for school-age children, and then for our teenage children, which is something that I really wanted the city of San Jose to participate in. And I don't know what the Children and Youth Master Plan will end up being. It is funded with $10 million that I fought hard for from the ARP funding. And we'll see if the new council decides that that's where the money will remain. Hopefully it'll remain there. And that's funding that we could leverage with one another, right? I mean, we've been talking about, like, a drop in the bucket in terms of like $400,000 for foster care youth and enrichment activities during the summer, when we could be really talking about how do we leverage each other's systems so that the needs of all of our children, whether they're foster care children or our latchkey kids or our kiddos living in environments that are very challenging, how do we support all of them, right? And how are we responsible for the system to work rather than having them work really hard to make the systems work for them, right? So with that, I'm going to ask about how we are engaging our community and our parents and educators and youth in that strategic plan that you're going to be pursuing.
Thanks, Supervisor. So one of the great kind of joys of the office is that we are so connected with different agencies that are doing the work too. So we've been working quite a bit with the City of San Jose as they work on their Children and Youth Master Plan, certainly First Five with all of their recent strategic planning efforts. In terms of community engagement, because our staff is fairly small, what we tend to do is myself or someone on my staff will join in on community engagement efforts that other agencies are really engaging in. Good. And what we can do is kind of bring what I think, based on, what I understand through this committee, through the, budget priorities, through the county priorities, and needs assessments that have recently been released through the county and partners and local organizations. What are the real needs of kids and families, and kind of bring that in to the community engagement process to say, look, I think we really want to hear from these specific communities. We want to ask about these specific issues and get at things that way. When we do community engagement directly, it tends to be for strategic initiatives. So I'll give you one example. We have the Child Care Infrastructure Grants Program, and really the recipients of those are definitely the providers in the county. And so we've held a lot of different information sessions and forums throughout the planning and development, and as part of the release of the applications to hear what the needs are from providers who are really working, of course, daily with parents and caregivers. And that helped inform our grants process. And then we continue to learn from them because we have a team of navigators that are supporting the providers as they complete the application. So we do community engagement, but it tends to be very specific to the programs. And then we sit in a lot of spaces with other agencies that are doing more broad community engagement efforts.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I know a lot of municipalities were dealing with as we were going through the pandemic and trying to figure out, like, what do our communities actually need? And the hardest to reach communities are the ones that take the most resources and time. And you mentioned, Cindy, earlier that, like, our foster care parents aren't really able to get online and register for classes because that's not their forte, maybe, or maybe they don't have access to reliable internet, although with a lot of the efforts that you have led here and efforts we've led at the city, lots of folks should have community Wi-Fi or some level of access, right, that's more reliable than it was before. And so with that, I think that there is an opportunity for us to figure out how our systems reach out to our communities when we really need them, right? When we really need to hear that feedback. That's so important. That's going to guide the money, the funding that's under your office, that's going to help our service providers, that is going to increase the slots for our childcare, that is then going to keep our children safe after school and during weekends and non-traditional hours, ultimately, right? But what we need is that feedback, and to me, I think our systems need to talk to one another, and this is something I'll bring up during our joint meeting, but I certainly want to mention it now, that our systems are always trying to get input from our communities in a very, whether it's youth or whether it's, hard to reach communities or whether it's childcare providers, it doesn't really matter. We're always trying to reach, connect with those folks, right? But when we need them, we can't just magically say, hey, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Because we don't have a relationship with them. And why should they trust us, right? You come every so often to ask me about blah, 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 because I'm a token whomever in the community, and now you think that that's what my community needs, and I represent that, right? And I think for a lot of municipalities, we struggled with trying to provide the services that that our community really needed. And one of the things that I think that we've discovered here at the county, but also certainly I'm in the city of San Jose, is that we've all recognized that there's some strategies that work above others, and Promotoras has been a very, very proven model. That for the very first time, I actually asked for Promotoras to be funded through our recovery efforts, and they were. There was for the very first time the city of San Jose had Promotoras, so that we can rely on a consistent source of folks that have relationships with people. And so I'm wondering, how will we build in these kinds of strategies so that we can always have our finger to the pulse in terms of community? Because we're going to talk about the gun violence study, and there is a consultant that's going to do some of this collecting of information and surveying and blah, 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 or in other areas. And I'm thinking, why are we continuing to rely on consultants that don't have the relationship? Maybe they have an expertise in a certain topic or area, but they don't have the relationships. So how do we strategically create a system where we have a constant feed to our community, and the consultants that we hire throughout our agencies provide just the resources and expertise that we need in that particular area, but not necessarily the relationships? Have you thought about that?
Yes, I have. I think I've thought about it, as have a lot of partners that
Sarah, we're just right here.
The other leaders in the county that are really working in service of children and families, I think, are on the same page with you of the importance of hearing from our kind of community connectors, the promotoras, the residents that can be involved not just during periodic needs assessments, but that can provide kind of ongoing insight into what is needed in the specific communities where we want to be. We want to be providing all the supports needed by kids and families. So I hear that, and when I'm in conversations where there are programmatic models being discussed, that often comes out, and I always notice a lot of support, a lot of effort, including a lot of effort to really uplift the voices of communities that have been underheard over the years. So when I have the opportunity, I bring that up. We definitely keep an open conversation on that in lots of the planning meetings that I'm in. So that I think that that I've noticed a high level of commitment to community voice throughout the county.
Yes.
And not just in the county, cities as well, and with different school districts.
Well, and to your point, you're going to be doing this through this strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just ask to think about, how do we integrate a process that we can all use, that we can rely on an ongoing basis, whether it's like the cities that work with us quite a bit, that have a lot of investment. For example, the city of San Jose, right? It's the largest city. It's easy to think about. Because we seem to be doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get information from our youth, trying to get information from our families, and it's the same thing over again. We know what works. The framework is promotoras. So how do we build in promotoras into the services that we already have? And I know that we already have them in some parts of our county or throughout our county. But how do we strategically place them when we have a contract so that we keep a promotora kind of on the line, if you will, throughout the different departments that your budget is going to tell us that impact children and families, right? So in every one of those that are listed, we would expect to have a certain number of promotoras that would then be able to keep this feedback loop between the community and us alive throughout the life of the contract. I'm not saying that this is my easy, this is how you can solve that problem, Sarah, you know. I know it's not an easy solution. I know it's more of a conversation with all of our partners, but what I'm hoping that you can focus on as you develop this strategic plan is to be strategic about how you are going to, on an ongoing basis, hear from our community and put a system in place that all of the rest of the departments and hopefully other municipalities can fold under, which is what I'm hoping that we can learn from you. So this is all on you, Sarah, to do. This is an opportunity for us to grow and then to answer that question. How do we keep that communication alive and that feedback loop alive through the work that we are already doing? And so anyways, and there's so much that is happening right now that it just makes sense to integrate that discussion when we're doing the Children and Youth Master Plan, when we're doing, I don't know where CAST is right now, but certainly, our whole system is being asked to deliver services in a very different way. And I think this is an opportunity, if there was ever an opportunity to change how we deliver and how we connect with community, it is absolutely now. And so it would be a shame not to actually do it. So anyways, I'm not asking you to think about what the answer is right now, but to actually think about how do you get to that answer as you're approaching your strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And there's no action required on this item except to say, very exciting. We're excited you're moving forward, and we'll look forward to, and I will check in with you a little bit more about that meeting with San Jose, because I want to make it as fruitful as possible. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on now to item 13, and this is the Youth Center for Evaluation and Advocacy. And come on up. Yes, welcome.
Do you want to do introductions? Oh, sure.
Welcome all. It's good to see you. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Serena Sy, Director of Primary Care for Santa Clara Valley Healthcare, and this is Sarah Oliveira, she's our Program Manager, and of course, Dr. Sturm.
Yes, the famous. So let me, I see you don't have a presentation, so I wanted to just see if there are questions. Sylvia, did you have any questions on this item? Okay, so I really just wanted to say a couple things. I wanted to say congratulations. You have a lot moving forward in the right direction. I did want to just ask if there were any issues you wanted to make sure that you highlighted for us that you see that are emerging, either emerging trends or emerging issues. And I asked this wearing two hats right now, one for this committee, just in terms of what kinds of supports that we could offer you. But the other is as we're, the county executive has been really clear, the office, that they're nervous about our budgets in the upcoming couple of years. And yet we're still in the process of building up these three areas. And so I just wanted to better understand if there's anything you want to make sure we're thinking about as we're thinking about the budget, and or if there are emerging trends you want to make sure Sylvia and I and the rest of this illustrious panel have in front of us.
We are very well aware of the budget situation, and we are really working towards using what we have to continue to grow and develop 455, the YCEA. It is made up of...
I'm so sorry, you're cutting out of that mic.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now
Okay.
better.
So I was saying that we are aware of the budget situation, and we are still ramping up some of these services. So CAC continues to grow. The Spark Clinic is going to be moving over. And then, of course, the PDSC is going to be moving into a larger space. So I think as of right now, we don't have any asks, but we will continue to keep you apprised of any of the changes that are coming.
So then just a second question, emerging trends that you're saying that we should be aware of? Dr. Sturm, I'm mostly, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello again. I think probably the most important thing to say is that we're continuing to see an almost vertical rise in the number of patients that we're seeing at the Children's Advocacy Center. I know whenever I say that, people worry that it means that there's more child abuse in Santa Clara County. That's not the case. It is a reflection of the increasing collaboration, ever-increasing collaboration with the 13 different law enforcement agencies in Santa Clara County. We're seeing more patients from South County. We're getting more patients from Sunnyvale, Mountain View, places that weren't using us as much about a year and a half ago. We saw more patients in September than we've ever seen before.
Wow.
And a week ago Friday, unbelievably, we had 6 cases between a hospital case in the morning that I saw, 5 cases that I saw with a colleague, and we had an evening case. So it was a total of 6 cases in one day. We've never had that before either. So I'm very, very proud of my team. I'm pleased to be able to tell you that 2.5 years in, we have been able to recruit some really excellent people. We're not where we need to be by any means. If we continue, we are absolutely at capacity in terms of the number of patients that we can see right now. And it is amazing, the whole idea of you dream it, it will come, right? The whole idea of CAC South is starting to be real for us. We're starting to talk about it, talk about how we would staff a CAC South. And I just want to remind you all that if that's something that you want to create in the next, call it 3 to 5 years, it is continuing to take us about 2 years from when a code is approved to when we have a provider who is ready, who's fully trained and ready to go. So I think the idea of CAC South, when we consider it in comparison to our benchmark communities, particularly San Diego, I'm not surprised that we're seeing the volume of patients that we're seeing. I think that the volume of patients, frankly, will continue to increase as law enforcement agencies use us more. So I agree, that's what our future looks like, and I just want to make sure that we're staffed adequately to continue to provide the expert, trauma-informed, thoughtful care that we provide to our patients.
Please share my And our very sincere thank you to you and your team. And I appreciate you waiting, but I did want to make sure I asked you on the record if there was what you needed. But I appreciate very much the point you're raising about these increased trusting relationships and the education of our partners to be able to use the facility is very real. And I really appreciate, Dr. Sturm, your reminder to us that, that we will see more as our partnerships deepen, and I think that's very important as well. Thank you. And we won't take action because we're receiving you, and well received. Thank you. Did I ask for public comment already?
There are no requests to speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 16. This is our recruitment and retention efforts with the LGBTQ community. Sarah, welcome. Maribel. Wait a minute, I can't see. If you could all introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, Maribel Martinez, Program Manager 3 with the Division of Equity and Social Justice, and I will hand it over to the Office of LGBTQ Affairs.
Hi there, Sarah Fernando, she, her pronouns. I am the leader and manager for Office of LGBTQ Affairs. We also want to introduce one of our new members to the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, who's sitting to the left of me.
Hi, Supervisor Cindy Chavez and Sylvia Arenas. Name is Asaldi Suribin, pronoun he, him, his. I'm the new Senior Management Analyst for Office of LGBT Affairs.
And we wanted to bring Saldi on to make sure that y'all folks are aware of new staff to help lead this work. Chairperson Chavez and Vice Chairperson Arenas, thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to present transgender, non-binary, and gender-expansive workplace inclusion. In this file, you'll find items including our Workplace Inclusion Action Plan and this report. And please note that during this presentation, I will be referring to transgender, non-binary, and gender-expansive people as trans and non-binary. I will also be referring to sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression as SOGI. Now, the goal of this initiative is to increase outreach and opportunities for trans and non-binary applicants, employees, vendors, and strengthen retention rates at County of Santa Clara by creating a diverse and inclusive workplace environment for everyone to thrive. In this presentation, we'll be covering updates on the development of new training offerings for county employees, our partnership with Employment Services Agency Human Resources, and multiple targeted recruitment and outreach efforts to trans and non-binary job seekers, upcoming trans and non-binary employment awareness campaigns, and updates to employment rights resources, gender inclusive policy, self-audit tools, and SOGI data collection. In March 2023, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs updated our action plan to support county workforce inclusion efforts. Strategies include enhancing county trainings, expanding trans and non-binary employment awareness and outreach, providing accessible guidance on trans and non-binary employment rights, developing a county gender inclusion policy, promoting self-audits, and considering SOGI pronouns and chosen names for county forms, activities, and data collection. To enhance county trainings, the initiative calls for continued exploration of implicit bias and workplace diversity trainings for all county employees. To that end, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs will be implementing a transgender and non-binary workplace inclusion Train the Trainer program on best practices for recruitment and retention specific to trans and non-binary job seekers and increased trans and non-binary workforce inclusion beginning fall 2023. The office will also be implementing an intercultural competency coaching pilot, which will focus on leadership engagement with the county's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals in fall 2023. The office has also purchased LGBTQ workforce inclusion simulation training located within the county's learning platform until June 2025. Next, as the initiative calls for expanding awareness to increase the visibility of trans and non-binary people, as well as promote employment resources and opportunities. Hence, Employee Services Agency and the Office of LGBTQ Affairs participated in activities aimed to enhance recruitment efforts toward LGBTQ+ and trans and non-binary job seekers for county positions, including Connect 2023, hosted by the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce, Empower Northern California, hosted by TransKinWork, and a Division of Equity and Social Justice Speaker Series panel event. The office is also developing trans and non-binary employment awareness campaigns to increase the visibility of trans and non-binary people. This includes a multimedia campaign designed to share the positive workplace experiences of trans and non-binary people, uplift role models within the trans and non-binary community, and encourage employers to be proactive in recruiting a diverse trans and non-binary workforce. We also have a mobilization program designed to create opportunities for trans and non-binary people to convene and connect, advise on the county's LGBTQ+ cultural competency efforts, and involve participants in professional skill development workshops and linkages to mentorship. Lastly, the initiative calls for guidance on trans and non-binary employment rights, gender inclusion policy, department self-led audits, and SOGI data collection. Currently, County Council, Equal Opportunity Division, Employee Services Agency, and the Office of LGBTQ Affairs are developing an implementation plan for an administrative guidance document related to gender inclusion at the county. The Office of LGBTQ Affairs will also be updating the county's Office of LGBTQ Affairs website to include contact information for county resources. The office will also look to design and create both digital and physical versions of a proposed self-audit guide with technical support and guidance from workplace inclusion subject matter experts. And the office will be providing technical assistance to ESA and technology services and solutions to ensure that the functionality to capture SOGI data collection in PeopleSoft is done in an LGBTQ+ culturally competent manner. That concludes our presentation, and we are open to any questions for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to see if there's any public comment on this item.
There are no requests to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing portion and say, welcome aboard, Saldi. I was looking at you, I'm like, wait, out of context. So I'm really glad to see you here. Just a couple of things. So first of all, thank you for the report. Very thorough and very exciting, the general direction we're going in. I have two requests. One request is that once the SOGI data collection is implemented through PeopleSoft, I would just send a quick update to the board. I think I've heard this at every meeting I've been at when this topic comes up, one of my colleagues or myself ask about it. And then the second is, I know that there's work being done on the gender inclusion policy for the county through the county council's office, but I don't know where it is in process. Michaela, by any chance, do you know off the top of your head?
I believe the review's completed, but I'll follow up on that, and then we can send an update.
And it'll come to the full board at its completion, or it'll at least be available? Maybe if you could, again, that would be an off agenda, just,
Yeah.
I would actually request that the policy get sent out, and then whatever the next steps are on it.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have no other questions, and appreciate very much the work that you're doing, and look forward to the next stages of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on then to item 17, and this is our sex and gender-based harassment and violence and related community engagement. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez and Vice Chairperson Arenas. Casey Halkin, Deputy County Executive. This afternoon, I'm here to provide you with a quarterly update on the countywide Title IX assessment. Today, I'm joined via Zoom by our contractors with Cozen O'Connor, a national expert in conducting comprehensive assessments of educational institution compliance with state and federal laws regarding sex and gender-based harassment and violence. I don't have a presentation prepared for you today, and in the interest of time, I thought I would ask to see if you had any questions.
Excellent. I will ask away. Do you have questions on this one? You want to go ahead and start?
Thank you. Sure. I know the outreach to the school districts is part of that is getting the survey done. And I saw that there was 15 returned, but I thought, is it 15 school districts that have completed the surveys, or is it literally 15 surveys?
I wanted to see, do we have members of Cozen O'Connor available via Zoom?
There are at least 2 members available, yes.
Before I comment, I was going to give it the opportunity to them to see if they would like to make some comment on that question.
Thank you.
They're free to speak.
Great. Good evening. Devin, do you want to address that question?
I will. Thank you. Good evening. Those are 15 surveys total. They came from schools within 5 districts, and then 2 districts that the Title IX coordinator completed the survey. So I would say 2 districts, 2 representatives from the district, and then 5 schools, but we had multiple responses within those 7 schools and districts, if that makes sense.
Got it. Thank you. That's a little disappointing in terms of results. And so actually one of the things that I was thinking about with this is, and especially in the outlined framework of the 5 different phases of for assessment and support, I thought about, and I don't know, what you make of these 15, literally 15 surveys that have been returned back. And I thought about, this is our process that we've identified, correct, as in terms of trying to accomplish our deliverables. Right, Casey? This is what we've identified as a county.
Yeah, that's correct, Supervisor. And I think it's very clear based on the number of responses that certainly there are many opportunities to enhance engagement with our school districts.
Right.
So administration and the Office of Gender-Based Violence and also the Office of Women's Policy has been meeting twice a month with our contractors, Cozen O'Connor, to really brainstorm ways in which we can improve community engagement. I myself personally have reached out to all of the districts via email and in some cases follow-up phone calls. We've also created a link on the website as well as an identified email box. We're working with our Office of Communication and Public Affairs for some public outreach and strategy as well. So we really are trying to think more deeply about how we can engage our districts and really trying to do so on a personal level. We've met multiple times with Dr. Dewan from the Santa Clara County Office of Education to explore this more fully. Her insights into the individual districts have been incredibly helpful. And we know that some of our districts face unique challenges. Some of them are smaller. It's kind of that quintessential, you're the principal, the Title IX coordinator, and the janitor. And so that strategy may look different for that district than it would for one of our mid-size or larger districts as well. And so we're being very thoughtful about tailoring our outreach depending on the need of the district, and really also, of course, keeping an equity lens in mind when we think about some of our underfunded and underprivileged districts as well.
That's a lot to take into account.
It is. It's a robust project.
It is. And so kudos to you, Casey. And as you heard earlier, one of the things that I wondered about is how do we gather information that we need when we need it, right? Obviously, we have no jurisdiction over school districts. And even with the information that we have now, that will culminate with all these efforts, right, whatever that information may be, we'll have to ask ourselves, did we get enough responses to make this feedback valid, right? And what is it really, what can we really interpret from this? And so I was thinking about maybe what we need to do is take a step back and ask, what do our school districts need, right, to achieve the deliverables that we've identified that are probably the same deliverables that they need to identify? And maybe the question is, instead of doing this independently from them, ask them how can we integrate, because I know that a lot of them have like a safety survey that they do on an annual basis, right? Can we add some of the questions at the end of their survey to their students or and to the faculty or to whoever it is that we're targeting? And then have our consultant be a consultant that is an expert in this area, in the implementation of this area, rather than the provider that's going to complete this project. And so I'm not trying to throw a wrench in all of this, but I just don't know how this is going to serve us and serve the schools if the school districts aren't participating in it.
Through the chair, if I may.
May I? I want to just give a little bit of history, and I want to recognize that this is a really important issue, and we have one more item on the agenda that I know you've been dying to get to, which is that.
I have been dying.
Yeah. So let me just make an observation. I'm going to make three of them. One is that that when this referral came forward, it came from students in high school and college who felt like their schools were not responding appropriately to their needs. And both, and this firm in particular, I would honestly say we had to persuade people to apply for it, because essentially what we were asking to do is audit another institution that we don't have, that we're not the boss of, in multiple institutions, and to do it in a way that would allow us to improve the responses of those schools to their students. And the concern, even in the very beginning from our staff, was if we do anything, not even this way, any action we take is going to be seen with some resistance for all the reasons that you know.
Right.
So what I had asked, and I had a chance to speak to Casey and Leslie and Devin, we can see your faces. It's the first time I've actually seen you, so I'm really excited for that. We had been working on this for such a long time, and I think one of the concerns that consultants had is that as they were looking at our work plan, that we were asking them to approach this in a way that was going to be somewhat controversial. So to that end, what I wanted to recommend and what I talked to Casey about was giving you and I an opportunity to have conversations with a couple of the larger school districts that are in our areas, with the consultants, to actually talk to them about what we were trying to accomplish, get their feedback, so that we would be able to align, to your point, what their needs are with our needs in a way that, which is what they already wanted to do, but I think it's an opportunity for us to reorient. So if I could, what I would do is make a motion to both receive the report, but for them to get some time with you and with me to go talk to our school districts, to have these exact conversations about, with the most appropriate ones in your district. And for me, there are two that I want to sit down and better understand how the process can be improved. But what I'd like to do is, given that they're national experts, is actually take our national experts with us.
Right.
So that we can better hear from both parties what the next steps would be.
Right. No, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we're both, I think there's a struggle with the way that what we're trying to achieve when we don't have jurisdiction over a school district and we're trying to be helpful. Right.
Yes.
And so I think the question is going to have to go back to the school districts. How is it most helpful to them? And really, I'm going to go back to my own point about, this is about relationships, right? And so, I mean, to your point, Cindy, the reason why our experts can walk into that office and have these conversations with these folks is because you'll have that relationship with those school district folks, right?
And you.
And like other electeds, right, we'll have those relationships, or you as a staff member will have those relationships that you've created because of projects that you've worked on in the past. So then, how are we best using our consultants to do the work that we need to do and rely on them for their level of expertise, but not expect them to complete like the whole project in and of itself?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there is a local touch, without a doubt, that we can bring to this project to facilitate more engagement and more robust engagement. I also would like to acknowledge the Office of County Counsel. they've been working very closely with Cozen O'Connor. Part of how we are working with the districts in partnership is around Title IX compliance and offering them training, right? We're looking at the regulations, helping to prepare information for them, kind of a toolkit for success. And then when the new regulations come out, our contractors and county council will be going to the districts with training opportunities. So really trying to take that off the shoulders of our districts, which they did express early on would be something that many of them could use help with. So that's our carrot, so to speak.
I love it, Casey. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, those were my questions, and I'm glad that of course, you've thought this through and are going to maximize the resources that we have at hand. So awesome.
So I'm going to make a motion to receive the report and engage both of us to help with our different districts.
Second.
Thank you.
Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez.
Yes,
Motion
thank you.
carries. Thank you.
Colleagues, I realize that it's very late. We have the cost of gun violence, and I have all of our department heads that still have reports. What I want to do is make sure that we go forward with the cost of gun violence, because I don't want Jeff to come back again. But what I will say to our colleagues that have verbal reports, I understand if some of you have other meetings and you need to leave. We can't leave because we mess up quorum, but I understand if other people need to. So just let me know. I know you have kids. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's right. Greta's going to her 4 o'clock. All right. Welcome, Dr. Rudman and Ms. McClinton Brown. Do you want to go ahead and give a brief overview, and then I had an opportunity to hear this in Public Safety and Justice, so I'm going to make sure you get a chance to ask all your questions. Go ahead. Or would
Thank
you want a
you. So
presentation
I'm
first?
Dr. Sarah Rudman, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, pleasure to be here. And just a very brief mention, no formal presentation, but I do want to make sure that you're aware what you have before you is meant to bring answers to multiple different questions related to some of the very complex and interconnected work around gun violence prevention happening across the county. In particular, public health was asked to conduct a geographic assessment of certain types of prevention activities, focused more on interpersonal gun violence and sort of gang-related activity. And the prevention activities performed by resident groups, community-based organizations, and government entities, specifically in neighborhoods that our data showed were most impacted by gun violence. And these areas included 8 zip codes in the city of San Jose and the city of Gilroy, with the ultimate goal to identify where we think the county can best support some of these resident-centered and grassroots efforts that were defined by our cost of gun violence study as where we really need some of the most investment and where the community is calling for the investment. But today's report is just a preliminary report back, and so most importantly, I think for you, Supervisor Arenas, it does not yet include the data for the city of Gilroy. We do intend to bring back the full report when the complete study is ready to share. So at this point, we're just open to hearing your input and helping to answer your questions as best we can. And as you mentioned, I have with me Ms. McClinton Brown, our Deputy Director for Policy, Strategy, and Planning.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you so much for acknowledging that the work is missing from Gilroy, so I won't reiterate how important it is to me to have that. As you've seen, I've weaved throughout this meeting the importance of connecting one effort to another, as I think a lot of this information should be seamlessly interrelated. And so I know that you'll present some of the information in the future, but I just do want to say, just for the record, that because there's 9 zip codes that were outlined, one of those being Gilroy, I would imagine that you would have started with Gilroy instead of it being at the very end, because I would imagine that work would have been done first and easier to carry out. So I expect that in the future that kind of effort be more deliberate
Can I, Sylvia, I want to make sure I understood what you said. Could you say that again? Are you referring to the overall study or the?
So this is, nowhere does it say there's a phase 2. And just to clarify, there's 9 zip codes, right? So those 9 zip codes, there's going to be a phase 2, although there's never mention of any phase 2. So there's some highlights and not entirely recommendations concretely done just yet, but you're almost there, right, for those 8 zip codes. Yet there's one zip code that didn't get any of that work done. And what I'm asking you to do is to be deliberate about that South County is one zip code. That information could have been collected, analyzed, highlighted, and formulated into some kind of recommendation or preliminary recommendation rather easily than 8 other separate zip codes. So I'm just going to highlight that.
May I just, I want to, the reason that caught my attention, Sylvia, is a discussion that happened at Public Safety and Justice around the same topic. Could you just give a little insight in response to what Supervisor Arenas is raising?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. So first, I want to acknowledge your excellent point that when we're talking about an entire city encompassed by one zip code, how incredibly important it is not to let that go unstated. I do want to be clear that the work has begun. We did not wait to do Gilroy assessment last. They were all begun at the same time. Our ability to have completed the Gilroy assessment in time for this preliminary report is unfortunately behind where we were for the San Jose zip codes, and I appreciate your input. Then, had that been structured differently, there might have been a different outcome. I'll see if Ms. McClinton-Brown has more to add, as I think she has more detail.
No, Supervisor Arena, thank you for that comment, and I appreciate the importance of Gilroy. It is really important to us, and if that's not reflected because of our inability to have a complete report at this time, our due apologies. We want to make it right, and we want to do our best job in coming back with recommendations that really resonates clearly with everyone, the Board of Supervisors, but also our partners and the community in Gilroy as well. And so we want to take our time and make sure that we're doing the right thing. But your point is well taken, and we will adjust moving forward.
And then the only thing I wanted to add, Supervisor, is that the report is coming back because we asked for it to come back even though it wasn't finished, in part so that they could get feedback from us, recognizing that what at least you shared with us the other day is that there was more work that had already been completed but wasn't actually reflected in here because of the timing that we asked them to bring the report back.
I appreciate that, Chair, but irregardless, you both are working on some of the same work that was in item, I can't remember whatever other item there is, and so I won't say it again. I just wanted to make sure I have it in the record, and I already have this feedback and assurance from you, and so I'm not trying to make it a big deal. I just want to make sure that you know that I know that this is important, and I would expect a level of equity built into how you approach your work that I would ask for any other community and any other work in any other department. And so I'll leave it at that, but I do want to know, what is the work plan that you have set up for this this second part, or phase 2 that you're calling it?
I'll start us off to say it's really the completion of what you've seen described here. These are partial data where we had responses from some but not all of the partners, or some but not all of the key spokespersons we had reached out to gather the information. For some areas, we had sufficient information to report partial findings, and for some, I think, very notably Gilroy, we didn't. So really what I expect that you will see for sure, when the complete report comes, is a format like what you see here for the 8 zip codes for San Jose, but mapped out more fully with added detail, including some of the San Jose zip codes may have added points of activity demonstrated. What we also received in the PSJC discussion last week was very detailed feedback from Supervisors Chavez and Ellenberg about additional elements for bringing this together. And that's really what we ask of you today, is to make sure that you see what you need to see when we come back with the final report. In addition to seeing an equivalent similar report for Gilroy, as you see for San Jose here, what more would be most impactful or powerful for you to see to make the points that you need to get the work done as you see it?
Well, I'm going to make a motion to accept the report, and I'm going to ask for an off-agenda report that delineates the work plan and the resources that are going to get invested to complete the Gilroy portion of this. And earlier I had mentioned, I thought it was in this.
Second.
Thank you so much. I thought it was the gun violence study that had the more of the focus of the domestic violence for the youth, but it wasn't. It was actually.
It was the first study.
It was it was in the juveniles residing in South County that actually had the top offenses. It wasn't listed for any other city, but felony domestic violence was listed as a fourth, the fourth top offense for juveniles. 19 this is 11, item 11. And so I think we can learn from what these other items are, and if we recognize that South County has this top offense, I'd like to make sure that when we do the portion of Gilroy, that this is also taken into account and integrated and recognized. I'm sure that this is something you probably were already going to do, but just to reiterate, and so we're on the same page and there isn't any other surprise, I want to make sure that you distinguish what is unique or different from South County in the same way.
Supervisor Arenas, can I just ask a question for clarification?
Sure, what?
I think the items that you're suggesting in the off-agenda report are the same items that would come back in the final report.
No, I'm asking you to tell me how you're going to get the work done.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm. And then what I'm also asking is to integrate what we've recognized in the annual juvenile justice data book, and one of the top 4 of 5 offenses or 7 offenses listed here is felony domestic violence, which is different than the rest of the cities that were listed for juveniles residing in South County. None of the other cities that were mentioned had felony domestic violence for juveniles. So I would like for that to be integrated somehow, because as we all know, domestic violence incidents typically, eventually end with some kind of deadly violence, and typically involves gun violence. And so I'd like to see how those two correlate with one another.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And that's all for now.
Yeah, and let me just add a couple things that might be of assistance as it relates to the South County and other communities where we're seeing hotspots. One thing, Supervisor, that I raised was that I felt like the zip codes were too large. They're too large a footprint. And I would actually say this for all of us that are doing reports, that we're using zip codes and we really should be using census tracts. And that's even true for probation, because to your point, I think it would be important to understand if we have hot spots faster And I think we would if we were using census tract data, and it's the same reason I know we used it for COVID, right? And it made a big difference. We would have made some very different decisions, or maybe not, but it seems to me we could have made some different decisions because of that. And then the other thing I'll just raise is that I'd also was very interested in us looking at suicide and death by suicide with firearms, because that's our largest use of firearms and firearm deaths in the county. I do just want to acknowledge that the report that's in probation, I know that they're probably at the table with you already. And just one other thing that Supervisor Arenas raised that I hadn't thought about actually, and I really appreciate your point about looking at where there are different behaviors by zip code. But one thing that I was also very interested in understanding when the final report comes back, the sources of information that you're able to use would be helpful to understand, because I think one thing for us, because we sit in so many, you do too, you sit in so many different meetings where you have different parts of the county there, understanding that you have access to everything we have access to. And one of the other issues I raised was with Dr. Jordan. So Dr. Jordan did in partnership actually with us, a study on how people were accessing, or I'm sorry, the types of firearms that were used in suicide, as an example. And I think that the types, whether they're ghost guns or not, for example, is an area that we invested a lot in ghost guns because they were being used in gang violence, but I don't know I can't remember their prevalence in suicide, as an example. So anyway, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second.
And there are no requests to speak. Vice Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're going to round up, thank you both. We're going to round up our meeting with verbal reports. All right, Dan.
Hi, good
Take it
afternoon.
away.
Vice Chair Arenas and Chairperson Chavez, Daniel Little, SSA Director. Our SSA Employee Engagement Program and our DEBS Intern and Earn Program both presented at a recent annual County Welfare's Director Association Conference, which was attended by well over 1,200 people. Both were well received and were great examples of our county's commitment to innovation, valuing employee voice, and whole family support for clients. Our Medi-Cal renewal efforts continues to be strong, reporting at or above pre-pandemic packet returns. In-depth reporting continues monthly at the Health and Hospitals Committee. Then finally, Medi-Cal adult expansion for ages 26 to 49 to full scope, regardless of immigration status, is on track to become effective January 1, 2024. We anticipate transitioning approximately 38,000 individuals from restricted scope to full scope automatically with the expansion. So really great news. So that's what I have.
That's
Ready for
good
any
news.
questions?
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. Ignacio Guerrero, Director for the Department of Child Support Services. I just have two quick updates, and they're both legislative. Assembly Bill 1148 was just signed into law on October 9th, and it's a significant change in terms of how we go about enforcing child support orders for a person paying support who's been incarcerated. The statute before this change was that they had 90 days post-incarceration before we would resume charging and billing for child support. Assembly Bill 1148 has extended that resumption to the 10th full month post-incarceration. So it's given them a significant longer period of time for those that are formerly incarcerated to be able to get on their feet, go through reentry services, and then be able to start working for us to then work with them on their child support obligation. There's an exception that anytime before that, if there are earnings that we find, we can take that case to court and establish a judgment, a new child support amount based on those actual earnings. So that does still have an opportunity for us to address it if we see earnings before that time period. Second update is Senate Bill 1055, and this has to do with driver's license suspension, which I know has been brought up in this committee in the past. There's a new law, which was signed in January of this year, that now states that the person paying support, their income If it's at or below 70% of the county median income, then we're not allowed to suspend their driver's license anymore. So it's a protection for those that are very low income, especially here in Santa Clara County, given what the median income is, for us to look at other ways to work with them on enforcement, but also not to hurt them in terms of taking their driver's license when they're trying to really become self-sufficient. So those are the two legislative changes that I wanted to update the committee on, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. No? All right, Nick.
Yes, just real quickly, with the support from NSU, Catherine Smith is hosting a dinner for parents at Valley Palms, where we certainly work with NSU. NSU is supporting the harvest festivals at both Catherine Smith and in Valley Palms, and in Gilroy, we are sponsoring the Spirits Night. So
You're sponsoring what, Nick?
Spirits Night.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just some fun stuff for us to be involved in with Valley Palms and certainly in Gilroy as well.
Oh, that's fun. Sarah?
Okay, I also have two quick updates on upcoming events and a release. So we have our first ever Shared Services Alliance conference for family child care providers, and that's on November 4th at West Valley College, and it will cover topics that have been informed by the family child care providers' priorities. And the registration is full, so we expect a really good turnout for that. We also have been, First Five, in partnership with our office and the Office of Public Affairs, has developed a brief 3-minute video, storytelling video on the apprenticeship program. And it's a really great video that has information on the program, interviews with partners and stakeholders, including providers and apprentices. So that is done, and we'll be posting it on our website, and I think there'll be also a broad distribution plan for that. So that's an exciting video about the apprenticeship program.
Is the conference going to be, Facebook Live? Can people watch it?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to ask.
That would be great
into
for
that.
folks who are, frankly, in their childcare businesses on that day.
It's a Saturday,
Oh,
so
that's
hopefully most of them can join. But I think I'll find out if it'll be recorded and shared out.
That would be really great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all very, very much. We appreciate you, each of you, and we will see you again on Monday, November 20th. Oh, actually, we'll see you before that on at our special meeting. So whenever that is, I'll see you. All right. Thank you all. Thanks, Colin.